Hello and welcome to the Snoozy Scientist. I'm really glad you made it here tonight. Wherever you are on this little blue planet, this gentle corner of calm has been made specially for you. A calm space where science and wonder can sit side by side, gently putting you to sleep. Tonight, we're going to slip back through time, far beyond the reach of memory, into one of the most powerful and beautiful stories our planet has ever written. Because 66 million years ago, the world ended. A 6-mile wide asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula with a force beyond imagination, energy equal to billions of bombs. The sky caught fire, oceans turned to steam, forests burned until the air itself glowed red, and in the darkness that followed, nearly 3/4 of all life disappeared. The age of the dinosaurs, rulers of land, sea, and sky for over 160 million years, was gone. But the story didn't end there. Extinctions are not always a clean ending, they are a pause in the rhythm of life. Because millions of years later, evolution would reach back into those lost designs and try to recreate them. Creatures that looked, moved, and hunted like the masters that came before. Enormous reptiles with scaled armor, long tails, and teeth shaped for dominance. Thunderous birds that hunted like raptors. Snakes as long as buses and thick as trees. Hunters that ruled land and sea with a familiarity that felt ancient. Over and over again, through every age that followed, nature seemed to whisper the same command: bring them back. Scientists call it convergent evolution, when life, faced with the same challenges, finds the same solutions again and again. But there's something haunting in that repetition, something that feels less like coincidence and more like memory. But why? Why does the earth keep returning to this shape? Why does it keep rebuilding its dragons? And could evolution itself carry the faint memory of what once ruled the world? Tonight, we'll follow that memory to uncover every attempt, every moment when life has tried to bring the dinosaurs back. But before we begin, if you're already enjoying this calm space, it would mean so much if you gave this video a gentle like, maybe even subscribed, if you'd like more sleepy science stories like this. And if you feel comfortable sharing, let me know in the comments, where are you tuning in from tonight, and what time is it there? It's always a joy to see how far across the world these gentle science stories travel. So now, take a slow breath, let your shoulders soften, and together, let's begin our journey into all the times Earth tried to bring dinosaurs back. When the last echoes of the impact faded, the world fell into a silence it had never known. The skies, once filled with light and movement, grew dark and heavy. For months, then years, ash hung in the air like a veil drawn across the sun. The warmth that had sustained life slipped away, and the planet began to shiver. In that long twilight, the earth was gray. Dust smothered the forests that had once stretched from pole to pole. Trees stood like blackened skeletons, their leaves long turned to ash. Oceans, stripped of sunlight, cooled and darkened until their surfaces reflected nothing but shadow. Waves moved sluggishly through the gloom, heavy with the remains of a vanished world. No roars or wing beats filled the air now. The great reptiles that had ruled the continents, seas, and skies were gone. The ground was still, save for the occasional tremor of a collapsing forest or the soft patter of falling soot. It was as if the earth itself was holding its breath. And yet, in the quiet places, something endured. Beneath the layers of soot and silence, a few survivors clung to the edges of life. Crocodiles drifted in slow, muddy rivers, their ancient eyes watching from just below the surface. They had seen the fall of empires before. They would see this one through too. Their blood ran cold, conserving what little warmth the dying world could offer. In the shallows, Turtles buried themselves in silt and waited. Their hearts slowed, their movements became barely perceptible. Patience was their gift, and patience was what the world required now. Above them, a few birds, the last descendants of the dinosaurs, searched for scraps among the ruins. Their feathers, dusty and thin, glimmered faintly when rare light pierced the ash filled sky. Each one carried a spark of the old world inside its fragile body, the same bones, the same blueprint, reshaped to survive. In the shadows of fallen trees, small mammals emerged cautiously. They were tiny, trembling things with quick hearts and sharp senses. For millions of years, they had lived in the background, quiet and unseen. Now, the night belonged to them. They crept through the darkness, feeding on what the giants had left behind seeds, roots, and insects that had escaped the inferno. Their warmth, so costly in the age of reptiles, was now their greatest advantage. The planet itself seemed to sleep. Volcanoes that once raged were stilled by the cooling air. The continents were wrapped in a thin crust of frost. Even time felt slower, as if life itself had retreated into hibernation. But deep within this pause, change was beginning. Beneath the soil, seeds waited for sunlight to return. Beneath the waves, coral fragments clung to rock, preparing to rebuild the reefs. Beneath the skin of every survivor, a quiet record of the past remained, written in the language of DNA. That memory, that invisible thread, held the story of everything that had come before. Inside the coat of crocodiles, birds, and mammals slept the echoes of creatures long gone, shapes, instincts, and patterns preserved through endless generations. The world had forgotten its color, its warmth, its giants, but it had not forgotten their design. As the years turned to centuries and centuries to millennia, the darkness began to lift. The ash that once choked the skies settled into the soil, becoming part of it. The first fragile beams of sunlight touched the land again, turning the frost to mist. Rivers began to flow freely. The air, once filled with poison, grew sweet enough for breath, and life, cautious, hesitant, began to rise from the shadows. It started small, as it always does. Ferns uncurled from the blackened ground. Insects, those tireless builders, returned to their work. Birds, descendants of winged predators, filled the silence with new songs. Each chirp was a declaration that the world still turned, that the pulse of life still beat beneath the scars. And in every creature that walked, swam, or flew in this new dawn, the old patterns waited. The curve of a beak, the arc of a spine, the strength in a limb, all whispered of a time when giants ruled the earth. The world did not yet know it, but the memory of the dinosaurs had not perished. It lingered quietly, carried forward in every living cell. The planet was rebuilding itself from memory, one heartbeat at a time. The fires had gone out, but the blueprint remained, hidden in the survivors who had endured the dark. In their bones, in their blood, and in the delicate spirals of their genes, the story of what once was continued, waiting, patient as the earth itself, for the chance to rise again. Long before the world healed, before the forests grew back and the skies cleared, a few old kings still lingered in the rivers. They had survived the fire, the darkness, and the cold. They had waited while others vanished, slipping beneath the surface and letting time flow around them. These were the crocodiles, the quiet witnesses of extinction and rebirth. They were not new to catastrophe. Long before the great asteroid fell, their ancestors had already endured other endings. When oceans rose and continents split, they simply moved with the rivers. When droughts turned wetlands to dust, they dug burrows and slept through the heat. When giants fell, they watched, patient and unmoving. It was not strength that saved them, but stillness. The earliest crocodilians had shared the world with dinosaurs, hunting at their feet and hiding in their shadows. They were river predators with armored backs and jaws like traps, designed for ambush and wading. That design had worked then, and it would work again. Across 200 million years, almost nothing about them would need to change. Evolution, faced with their efficiency, simply stopped tinkering. In the slow return of warmth after the extinction, when jungles began to spread again and rivers filled with life, crocodiles reclaimed their thrones. The blueprint that had outlasted the world's ending was still there: muscle, patience, and power in perfect balance. They moved like ghosts through brown water, ancient eyes just above the surface. Each ripple they made was a memory of an age long gone. But even in that silence, something was growing. The survivors of the asteroid's winter had begun to evolve, and with every passing million years, the world became warmer, wetter, more alive. The reptiles felt it first. Heat meant energy, energy meant size. The crocodiles began to rise again. In the heart of the Cretaceous, long before the end, one of their ancestors had already reached monstrous proportions. Its name was Deinosuchus, which means terrible crocodile. It lived in the swamps of what is now North America, where rivers wound lazily through fern forests and young dinosaurs drank at their banks. Deinosuchus waited just beneath the waterline, still as stone, its massive back disguised among fallen logs. When prey approached, the calm exploded. It could reach lengths of more than 30 feet, its skull alone as long as a man is tall. Its bite was one of the strongest forces nature had ever built, capable of crushing bone and shell alike. Deinosuchus did not chase. It did not need to. Its power came from patience. It waited for the right moment, and the river always brought something close enough. Time carried that design forward, barely touched. Millions of years later, long after Deinosuchus had vanished, another giant rose in South America's tropical rivers. Its name was Persaurus. It lived around the Miocene, in the deep green wetlands of the Amazon, where warmth never left and rain fell like mist. The world was alive again, filled with birds, mammals, and thick forests, a new generation of giants for an old predator to meet. Persaurus stretched nearly 40 feet from snout to tail. Its jaws were wider than the height of a standing man, and within them teeth the size of bananas gleamed in the sunlight. It could overpower almost anything that came near: giant turtles, early tapirs, even small whales that ventured upriver. When it struck, the sound echoed through the jungle like thunder rolling across water. But despite its power, it was not chaos that defined Persaurus. Like its ancestors, it was a creature of balance. Every movement was slow, measured, deliberate. It hunted with silence and waited with the patience of stone. In it, the perfection of reptilian design had reached its height. Scales formed armor, tail became engine, and instinct became art. The world around it had changed. Mountains had risen, climates had shifted, new species had filled the land. Yet the crocodile remained the same. Its body carried the proof that some designs cannot be improved upon. Its lineage stretched backward through time like a river returning to its source. Even after extinctions, after ice ages, after continents tore themselves apart, the crocodile's shape endured. As life on Earth continued to evolve, chasing new paths and forms, the crocodiles simply watched from their waters. They were a reminder that progress is not always forward, that sometimes survival is found in staying exactly as you are. Their story was not one of transformation, but of endurance, a quiet defiance written in armor and patience. In their ancient gaze, the earth could see its own reflection. They had lived through the fall of empires of scale and claw. They had seen the end of the dinosaurs and the rise of mammals. They would see more endings still, And through it all, their shape would remain, familiar as time itself. For in the crocodile, nature had already found perfection. It had already written the equation of strength and silence, of power and patience. The design was complete, but even they were only the first echo. Something larger was stirring. When the warmth finally returned, it came slowly, creeping across the planet like dawn spreading through a long, dark night. The air grew heavier, the rains more constant, and the forests began to breathe again. From the ashes of the extinction rose a new world, humid and green, where the air itself seemed alive. The rivers ran wide and deep, carrying life through the heart of what would become South America. The Paleocene had begun, and with it the reign of a new giant. In these vast wetlands, the air shimmered with heat. Trees, still young in their rebirth, grew thick with vines. Insects as large as birds buzzed through the undergrowth, and mammals, small, cautious, and curious, searched the jungle floor for fruit and shelter. Crocodiles ruled the rivers, and giant turtles the lagoons. But beneath the surface, in the slow moving waters choked with reeds and mist, another ruler was waking. Its shape was simple, ancient, and perfect. A long body built for stealth, a coiled engine of muscle and patience. The creature glided silently through the shallows, parting the water without a ripple. It was a snake, but no ordinary one. Its name, given millions of years later by scientists who uncovered its bones, was Titanoboa. Titanoboa was longer than a city bus, stretching more than 40 feet from head to tail. Its body, thick as a barrel, could crush the breath out of anything it caught. Its weight alone could sink small boats, and its strength could bend the bones of crocodiles. In the steamy jungles of the Paleocene, it was the undisputed king. For nearly 10 million years after the fall of the dinosaurs, Titanoboa ruled the rivers of ancient Colombia, where temperatures hovered near 100 degrees and humidity never lifted. The warmth of this new world was the key to its size. Cold-blooded creatures rely on the heat around them to fuel their bodies, and when the planet grows hotter, they grow larger. In Titanoboa, nature's blueprint for gigantism had returned once more. Its world was a greenhouse Earth. Vast tropical forests stretched from the equator toward the poles, and the carbon-rich atmosphere trapped warmth like a blanket. Reptiles thrived in the heat. Each year, the jungles thickened, the wetlands deepened, and the rivers became cradles of power. Here, evolution was not in a hurry. It worked with the slow precision of water wearing down stone. In that still, heavy air, Titanoboa hunted with patience. It moved like a shadow through brown water, its scales glistening beneath shafts of filtered sunlight. When prey came near, a turtle, a crocodile, or some slow-moving mammal testing the shallows, the calm surface of the river would suddenly erupt. The snake's jaws struck like lightning, its coils closing in a heartbeat. Within moments, the struggle would end, and the river would fall quiet again. The fossils that tell its story were found deep within the Suricone coal mines in northern Colombia, where ancient swamp deposits had turned to stone. There, paleontologists uncovered vertebrae the size of dinner plates, each one so large that it could only have belonged to something enormous. When the skeleton was reconstructed, its length defied belief. For the first time, the true scale of the Paleocene jungle became clear, a world hot enough and rich enough to sustain monsters. Titanoboa was more than just a relic of size. It was a sign, written in bone, of how deeply climate shapes life. When the earth warms, ecosystems expand, plants grow faster, insects flourish, and the chain of life builds upward. With more energy in the air, bodies grow bigger, metabolisms quicken, and predators stretch toward the limits of what nature allows. The pattern that once favored dinosaurs had returned, rewritten into scales and coils instead of claws and teeth. For mammals, this world was a dangerous place. They lived small lives among the roots, darting from cover to cover, surviving in the brief pauses between giants. Every sound, the splash of a fish, the rustle of leaves, the faint movement of water, could mean death. Yet from those fragile beginnings, they would one day rise to dominate. But for now, the rivers belonged to the serpent. In the heat, evolution remembered its old equations: long bodies for balance, powerful lungs for slow, patient strikes, muscles built for silent control. Each feature of Titanoboa's form was a reflection of the world that made it, a world so hot that even its shadows seemed to sweat. And then, as the ages turned, the warmth began to ease again. The planet cooled, the forest shifted, and the giants faded. But the fossils they left behind still whisper their message to those who listen: that warmth brings power, and that the Earth's memory always leans toward size. Each time the planet breathes in heat, it remembers the forms that once ruled under its burning skies. For life on Earth, warmth is more than comfort, it is power. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement depends on the energy flowing through the planet's living systems. The warmth of the air, the heat of the oceans, and the fire of the sun all join in a slow, rhythmic dance that has shaped life since the beginning. When the world grows warm, everything changes. Forests deepen, creatures grow larger, and the boundaries of what is possible stretch wider than before. Deep within the balance of life lies a quiet law, one that links the shape of every creature to the temperature of its world. It begins at the smallest scale, within the cells that power movement and thought. Warmth makes chemistry move faster. It fuels reactions, quickens growth, and awakens metabolism. Cold, by contrast, slows everything down, pressing life into smaller forms that use less energy. In a warm world, energy flows freely. Sunlight strikes the forests for longer hours, and plants turn it into food at an astonishing rate. Leaves grow thick and broad, trapping the air beneath dense canopies. Insects swarm, feeding on that endless green abundance, and from them rise the hunters, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, each layer feeding on the one below. Heat expands the base of the pyramid, and in doing so, it lifts the creatures at its peak to enormous sizes. This pattern has played out again and again across Earth's history. During the Mesozoic era, when dinosaurs ruled, the planet was far warmer than it is today. The poles were free of ice, and tropical forests reached to the edges of the Arctic Circle. The oceans steamed with life, their surfaces rich with plankton, and their depths home to giant marine reptiles. The warmth allowed energy to move swiftly through ecosystems, turning sunlight into flesh, scale, and bone. Dinosaurs grew to lengths beyond imagination, not because they defied nature, but because they followed it perfectly. Their world was a greenhouse Earth, an age of carbon and humidity, where the temperature's steady pulse encouraged life to grow bold. Even creatures that shared the same ecological roles later, mammals, birds, and reptiles of cooler epochs, rarely reached the same immense scale. Cold is a sculptor that carves carefully. Warmth, by contrast, is an artist that paints with excess. To understand why warmth breeds giants, it helps to think of metabolism as a fire within each living thing. For animals that generate their own heat, like mammals and birds, a stable body temperature means freedom from the cold, but also hunger that never fades. They must eat often, burning fuel just to keep the fire alive. But for creatures like reptiles and amphibians, which rely on the warmth of their surroundings, the equation shifts. In hot climates, their metabolism runs faster, yet costs less. They grow larger without needing constant food. Warmth gives them efficiency, allowing power without waste. When the global temperature rises, this invisible balance tilts. Plants store more carbon, insects multiply, and predators that can use the heat begin to dominate. The chain reaction spreads through every layer of life until even the giants return. It is not coincidence, but consequence, a physical truth written into the fabric of evolution. Earth's warmth acts like a great engine, cycling through time with patient regularity. It builds and breaks, exhales and inhales through the slow churn of continents and the breath of volcanoes. When carbon fills the air, the world breathes in heat. When the planet cools, glaciers spread, forests retreat, and life folds inward again. Every swing between hot and cold redraws the rules of existence, shaping the rise and fall of species in long, sweeping arcs. Each warm age becomes a stage for abundance, for towering trees, massive reptiles, and oceans that shimmer with creatures as vast as ships. Each cold age, in turn, becomes a test of endurance, where smallness, speed, and warmth within replace size and strength without. Together they form the heartbeat of the planet, an endless rhythm of expansion and retreat. In every fossil, this pattern is visible. The bones of Titanoboa in the heat of the Paleocene, the skeletons of sauropods from Jurassic plains, the shells of giant turtles from ancient lagoons, all carry the same signature of warmth. They are echoes of times when the planet's pulse quickened, and life, responding to the tempo, grew large enough to fill it. This is why climate is not just a backdrop to evolution, but its conductor. It sets the tempo, deciding which shapes will flourish and which will fade. When the world grows hot, the fire of life burns wide and bright. When it cools, the light narrows but deepens, favoring cleverness over size, warmth over strength. Through every age, the cycle repeats. The earth warms and life expands. The earth cools and life contracts. The blueprint of giants is never truly lost. It waits quietly within the genes of survivors, ready to awaken when the temperature rises again. It is a reminder that climate is not just weather or air, it is the memory of the planet itself, a great reset button that rewrites the story of life with every turn of its ancient steady wheel. When the continents began to drift into their modern shapes, South America became a world apart. For millions of years, it was an island continent, sealed off from the north by seas and from the east by deep ocean. In this isolation, life followed its own strange and beautiful path. What had vanished elsewhere found echoes here. In the grasslands and forests of this southern land, new predators rose to fill the silence left by the dinosaurs. They were not reptiles, nor were they mammals. They were birds, but birds unlike any that soar across the skies today. These were the forest racids, known to science as the terror birds, standing 10 feet tall, with long legs built for sprinting and skulls large enough to crush bone. They became the apex hunters of South America's wild plains. They ruled this land for more than 60 million years, from the early Paleocene to the dawn of the Ice Age, when the first great migrations of mammals began to cross from the north. Their world was one of contrasts. To the west, the Andes were still rising, pushing snow-capped peaks higher each century. To the east stretched endless savannas, dotted with lakes and forests that shimmered in the heat. Herds of giant herbivores grazed the open spaces, early relatives of armadillos, sloths, and horses, strange creatures shaped by the continent's solitude. It was among them that the terror birds hunted, their shadows long and deliberate against the golden light. Imagine one of these giants in motion. Its body leaned forward in a posture strikingly familiar, balanced on two muscular legs that ended in taloned feet. The wings were no longer meant for flight. Instead, they had shrunk into powerful arms tipped with claws, helping the bird keep its balance as it sprinted. At the end of a long, curved neck sat a head nearly 3 feet long, armed with a beak shaped like a scythe. Each strike was swift and precise, crushing skulls or slicing through flesh with a single motion. The largest of them, Titanus and Kelenkin, towered over the plains like walking memories of the past. Their eyes, forward-facing and sharp, could spot movement from hundreds of feet away. When prey ran, they followed with long, loping strides, their bodies swaying with rhythm and control. And when they caught their target, they struck downward, driving their hooked beaks into the softest parts of the body. There was no roar, no hiss, only the soft thud of talons against the earth and the quick, brutal silence that followed. In their design, evolution seemed to repeat itself. The Phorusrhacids stood as proof that nature does not forget what works. Their forward-leaning stance, their balance between strength and speed, their predatory precision, all mirrored the raptors of the Mesozoic. Where evolution once crafted claws and teeth, it now used feathers and keratin. But the purpose was the same. The role of the hunter had returned, only wearing a different skin. Scientists studying their fossils often remark on this eerie similarity. The bones of their legs, the curve of their necks, even the proportions of their skulls recall the outlines of creatures like Velociraptor and Deinonychus. But these were not descendants of dinosaurs in the way that crocodiles or lizards were. They were descendants of the birds that had survived the Great Extinction, creatures that had once lived in the shadows of dinosaurs, now rising to take their place. Their success was also tied to their world. South America's climate, warm and lush, offered space and energy for giants to thrive. The same warmth that once gave rise to Titanoboa now sustained these towering predators on land. The circle continued, the blueprint repeating in feathers instead of scales, in silence instead of thunder. Though they ruled as kings, their reign was not eternal. When the continents finally met again and a land bridge formed between North and South America, new predators arrived. Cats with saber-shaped teeth, wolves that hunted in packs, and bears that moved with relentless strength. The terror birds fought, adapted, and for a time survived, but slowly their kind faded into memory. Yet their story, written in bone and beak, still carries the same lesson that echoes through all of Earth's ages. Life remembers its champions. Even after tens of millions of years, the design that once stalked the jungles of the Cretaceous returned to stride across the grasslands of the Paleogene. The world, in its warmth and abundance, had once again called back the form of the hunter, and in their swift movements, in their fierce eyes and thunderous steps, the ancient world flickered back to life. Even the air seemed to remember the raptors. After the fires and jungles, after the reign of reptiles on land and in the swamps, the story of life turned its gaze back toward the sea. The ocean had always been Earth's quiet memory, a place where change moved more slowly, where extinction was followed not by silence but by transformation. When the great marine reptiles vanished, the waters fell still for a time, their vast highways empty. Yet, as the warmth of the planet deepened once again, something ancient stirred within the waves. The surface shimmered with light, endless and calm. Beneath it, currents carried the whispers of the past, of creatures that had once ruled these depths. The mosasaurs, the sea's thunder lizards, were gone, their bones settling into limestone far below the seafloor. They had ruled for millions of years, their bodies built for power and speed, their tails sweeping through warm Cretaceous oceans like living swords. Now, the world's heat had shifted, and their time had ended, but the ocean, faithful to its patterns, did what it had always done. It remembered. In the millions of years that followed, new travelers entered the water. They were land mammals, warm-blooded descendants of the survivors who had scurried through the shadows of the dinosaurs. At first, They waded along shorelines, chasing fish and crustaceans. Then, generation after generation, they went deeper. Their legs shortened, their bodies lengthened, their lungs adapted to hold great stores of air. The farther they went, the more the ocean reshaped them, sculpting them into something that looked startlingly familiar. Among these new ocean dwellers was one of the first true giants of the sea, Basilosaurus. Despite its name, meaning king lizard, it was no reptile. It was a mammal, a distant cousin of cows and deer, drawn back into the water by the abundance of life there. Yet its form, when seen in full, mirrored that of the reptiles that had come before it so perfectly that, for a long time, even scientists were deceived. Basilosaurus was nearly 70 feet long, with a long, narrow body built for speed. Its head was long and pointed, its jaws lined with conical teeth that fit together like gears. Its spine curved with a serpent-like grace, allowing it to undulate through the water rather than simply swim. From a distance, it could have been mistaken for a mosasaur reborn. The resemblance was uncanny, not because of shared ancestry, but because the ocean had dictated the same rules twice. In water, shape is destiny. To move efficiently through a dense, fluid world, there are only so many solutions nature can choose. The long, tapered form, the powerful tail, the streamlined skull, all are dictated by physics. Where gravity loosens its grip, drag and resistance take its place, sculpting every creature that calls the ocean home. Sharks, ichthyosaurs, mosasaurs, and whales, though born of different ages and lineages, all converge upon the same design. The ocean erases, history's divides, and writes its own geometry. As Basilosaurus glided through ancient seas, it hunted fish, sharks, and smaller whales. Its jaws could crush bone with a single bite. Yet it was not a creature of chaos, but of grace. Its movements were slow and deliberate, every flick of its tail sending ripples of silver through the water. Around it swam schools of smaller fish that glowed with refracted light, and above, the surface shimmered like glass. The violence of the asteroid age had long since faded. The seas were calm again, vast and endless, as if the earth itself was exhaling after a long breath of fire. Beneath that peace, evolution continued its patient work. The descendants of Basilosaurus would become sleeker, smarter, and more social. Some would learn to use sound as sight, painting the world with echoes. Others would grow into gentle giants, filtering entire oceans through their mouths. The whales, inheritors of the marine blueprint, would one day take the place of all that had come before, not because of chance, but because the sea had guided them there. Each ripple, each current, each law of motion repeated the same truth. Physics remembers. No matter how many times extinction sweeps the board clean, the same shapes return, carved by the same invisible hands. The torpedo form, the fins, the fluke of a tail, they are not inventions, but rediscoveries, as if the ocean itself insists on rewriting the same melody over and over. If one could stand on a cliff above those ancient waters and look down, they would see not monsters, but a reflection of memory, the same silhouettes, the same gentle rhythm of life rising and falling through the blue. The world had changed beyond recognition, yet in the language of motion, it remained the same. The jungles that once burned now lay behind. The forests had cooled, the air grown dense with salt and mist, and here, beneath the quiet roll of the waves, the earth began to dream again. The fires had gone out, the land had rested. Now the ocean remembered. In the silence that followed the giants of the sea, the warmth of the world began to gather once again across the continents. Forests crept outward, covering the land in green canopies that shimmered under the humid air. Rivers carved new paths through stone. The soil was thick with life, insects humming, mammals darting, birds weaving songs among the leaves. But under that calm surface, something older was stirring, something born from a line that had never broken, a whisper from the time when reptiles ruled the earth. Across Asia, Africa, and the scattered islands that bridged them, new hunters began to appear. They moved on four legs, low and deliberate, with scales that caught the sun like burnished metal. Their tongues flicked in and out, tasting the air, sensing heat and scent in ways no mammal could. Their eyes, sharp and steady, carried the ancient patience of their ancestors. These were the monitors, descendants of a lineage that stretched back to the first great reptiles of the Mesozoic. The earth had seen the shape before: long tail, muscular body, jaws lined with sharp, recurved teeth. It was a pattern that worked, one nature had perfected long ago. But this time, there was something different. This time, intelligence had joined the design. The monitors were thinkers. They studied their surroundings, remembered, planned. Their movements were not just instinct, but calculation. They could climb, swim, and run with astonishing speed. They were cold-blooded, yet their minds burned bright. Fossil records trace their ancestry to small, lizard-like predators that survived the extinction. Over millions of years, as the earth warmed and cooled again, they spread across continents, adapting to deserts, forests, and islands. In each environment, they grew larger, smarter, more efficient. Their claws became tools, their tongues instruments of awareness. In them, evolution was sketching the outline of a dragon, not of myth, but of reality. In Australia and Southeast Asia, these creatures would become legends in their own time. The Komodo dragon, the largest living species of monitor, still carries the echo of that ancient blueprint, growing up to 10 feet long, with a body built for stealth and a venomous bite. It is both graceful and deadly. Its muscles ripple beneath rough, patterned scales, each movement a blend of power and control. It stalks with a kind of eerie calm, its steps soundless, its gaze unwavering. The venom of these modern dragons is subtle but powerful. It does not kill instantly. Instead, it weakens and slows the prey, a quiet toxin that lowers blood pressure and thins the body's defenses. Combined with the bacteria in its saliva, it turns a single bite into a slow inevitability. The prey runs, but the dragon follows. It can track the scent of blood for miles, guided by that flickering tongue, by patience, by time. In the monitors, the world had rebuilt something it had lost, an apex hunter born of heat and silence. Their success was written not in raw strength alone, but in adaptation. They learned to raid nests, to dig burrows, to watch and wait. Some hunted in water, others in the high trees. A few even learned to work with the environment itself, using rocks and roots to trap or corner prey. Such behavior blurred the line between instinct and understanding. Their intelligence is not human, but it is sharp in its own way. Studies of modern monitors show they can count, solve simple puzzles, and recognize individual humans after long periods of time. They know how to cooperate when hunting and how to navigate unfamiliar terrain by memory. In their scaled heads, the brain that once belonged to simple reptiles had become something altogether new, something aware. As the continents shifted and the climate pulsed between warm and cool, the monitors thrived. In every corner of the old world, they became part of the landscape's rhythm, silent guardians of the tropics. In their form, evolution once again remembered the balance between speed and stealth, intelligence and patience. They were not creatures of fire or wing, but of sun and soil. When they moved, it was as if the ancient earth itself breathed through them. And so the blueprint that had once crawled through swamps and soared through Mesozoic skies found itself walking again on four legs, refined and quiet, scaled and deliberate. In them, the memory of dragons stirred, not the roaring beasts of storybooks, but the living symbols of resilience, of the planet's endless creativity. If one were to watch a monitor lizard today, basking in the heat, its chest rising slowly with each breath, its eyes half lidded in calm focus, one would see the faint shadow of that past world. The age of the dinosaurs may have ended long ago, but the Earth never truly forgot their design. It remembered their rhythm, their form, their hunger for life. Nature, patient and precise, was sketching the dragons once more. Far from the shifting continents and crowded ecosystems of the northern world, there was one land that seemed untouched by time. While mountains rose and fell elsewhere, while new predators and mammals evolved into strange shapes, this place drifted alone, carried slowly by the turning of the planet. Its forests were filled with echoes of the past. Its skies shimmered with heat and birdsong. Its rivers whispered with age. This was Australia, a world apart, a place that forgot to move on. When the supercontinent Gondwana broke apart, Australia began its long, lonely journey southward. As it drifted, it carried with it a memory, a fragment of an older world where reptiles ruled and mammals were small and secretive. Cut off from the continents to the north, it became a living museum, preserving what the rest of Earth had long since left behind. Here, isolation was not a prison, but a time capsule. Every creature that walked, swam, or flew across this land carried ancient stories written into its bones. In this solitude, evolution followed different rules. Without great predators like cats or bears, and without the influence of human ancestors for millions of years, Australia became a laboratory of life, one guided not by conquest but by continuity. The blueprint of Earth's ancient past lived quietly here, in creatures that seemed to belong to another age. The land itself looked like a dream of prehistory. Eucalyptus forests stretched toward a pale sky, their scent sharp in the heat. Rivers wound slowly through red earth and sandstone, feeding wetlands where shadows moved just beneath the surface. Across these plains roamed giants, enormous marsupials that grazed in herds, some standing taller than men. They were the descendants of the earliest mammals that had ventured into this strange land, shaped by its dryness, its isolation, and its abundance of open space. Among them was Diprotodon, the largest marsupial ever known. It was a gentle titan, resembling a colossal wombat or slow-moving bear, its thick fur protecting it from the fierce sun. It wandered through scrublands and open forest, feeding on leaves and roots, its deep footprints pressing into the dry soil. Alongside it lived massive kangaroos that did not hop but walked, heavy-bodied, slow, and deliberate. There were predators too, though none like the ones in other parts of the world. Tylocoleo, the marsupial lion, was one of them. Though it was not a true lion, it filled the same role. It had powerful forelimbs, retractable claws, and slicing teeth designed for cutting through flesh. Its skull, compact and strong, could deliver a bite as forceful as that of a big cat. Yet even this fierce hunter shared the same soft, furred face as its herbivorous cousins, a reminder that in Australia, evolution had chosen its own peculiar path. But not all of the ancient inhabitants of this continent were mammals. Alongside these marsupial giants lived the old bloodlines of the reptiles, creatures that, in their size and design, seemed like memories of the Mesozoic itself. Great monitor lizards stalked the rivers and woodlands, their scales catching the sunlight like fragments of armor. The most fearsome of them was Megalania, a predator that could reach lengths of more than 20 feet. It was intelligent, venomous, and quiet, its tongue flicking in and out as it sensed the air for movement. When it struck, it did so with precision, a quick rush, a snap of jaws, and then stillness. Its venom weakened its prey, and its patience did the rest. Early humans who wandered into this land may have seen it from afar, mistaking it for a dragon or a living shadow. In truth, they would not have been entirely wrong. Megalania was one of the last of the Earth's great reptiles, a creature whose lineage reached back to the dawn of the dinosaurs. In Australia, the old and the new lived side by side. Warm-blooded marsupials shared their world with cold-blooded hunters, each balanced within an ecosystem that seemed to defy time itself. The continent's isolation had frozen evolution's clock, allowing ancient lineages to survive long after they had vanished elsewhere. The creatures that roamed its forests and deserts were not relics. They were survivors, carrying the living memory of a world that had once burned with the breath of giants. Even the birds here told the same story. The cassowary, tall and armored with a crest of keratin, could have walked beside the raptors of the Cretaceous without looking out of place. The emu's long stride and feathered form echoed the running dinosaurs of long ago. Their bodies, their balance, their very way of moving spoke of deep time. To walk through this land was to step into Earth's memory, a place where evolution had paused, where every creature seemed like an echo of something older. The modern world existed elsewhere. Here, life still followed its ancient rhythm, unchanged and unconcerned. Australia was a reminder that isolation is not absence, but preservation. In its solitude, the planet had kept a fragment of its past alive, a continent where the old patterns never faded, where the blueprint of life remained written in bone and scale and fur. Here, evolution never got the memo that the dinosaurs were gone. In the heart of Australia's dry plains, beneath skies that shimmered with heat, a shadow once moved with the quiet certainty of an ancient predator. Its steps were soundless on the red earth. Its scales glimmered in the sunlight like worn bronze. When it breathed, the air trembled with a low hiss, and when it struck, the ground seemed to remember. This was Megalania, the land dragon. It was the last and greatest of its kind, a giant among reptiles, a creature that carried within its blood the memory of the age of dinosaurs. At 23 feet long from snout to tail, it was as long as a small truck, its head large enough to crush bone, its muscles coiled like living rope. Its tongue flicked through the air in slow rhythm, tasting invisible trails of scent and heat. In its body, nature had perfected balance, patience, precision, and the quiet power of inevitability. To imagine Megalania is to glimpse what the earth once was before humans wrote their story upon it. The continent it ruled was wild and ancient, a mosaic of eucalyptus forests, open savannas, and deserts painted in gold and crimson dust. Kangaroos bounded through dry scrublands, wombats dug tunnels into the soft soil, rivers wound through canyons lined with red stone, their banks alive with life that only night could reveal. And among them, moving with slow, confident grace, was a reptile that seemed carved from the bones of time itself. It was intelligent, at least in the way that monitor lizards are today, calculating, adaptable, aware. It could watch, learn, and wait. Its movements were deliberate, never wasted. It hunted by stillness. It could spend hours, even days, motionless beneath the shadow of a fallen log or a patch of long grass, every sense attuned to the rhythm of its surroundings. When prey came close, Megalania would strike in a sudden blur of motion, a burst of muscle and precision that ended in silence. Its bite was laced with venom, not unlike that of modern monitors. The toxin did not kill immediately. It weakened, lowering blood pressure, slowing the heart. The prey would stumble, falter, and collapse. Then Megalania would follow, tongue flicking, patient as ever, guided by scent and instinct. Death was certain, but it was never rushed. This was a hunter that understood time. For thousands of years, it ruled the Australian continent as the apex of its world. No rival challenged it. Even the great marsupials, the lumbering diprotodon, and the massive kangaroos that stood taller than a man were not beyond its reach. Its jaws could crush bone, its claws could shred flesh, and its size alone was enough to command the landscape. But what made it truly fearsome was not its strength, it was the intelligence behind its stillness. And then, one day, new footprints appeared in its world. Small, light, deliberate. Early humans had arrived on the continent, drawn by the promise of untouched land. They moved in groups, carrying tools of stone, following water and fire. They were hunters too, but of a very different kind, creatures of reason and imagination, capable of seeing beyond the moment. Somewhere on that vast and sunburned continent, their paths must have crossed. A hunter of flesh met a hunter of thought. The encounter may have been brief, or it may have been legendary, echoing across generations as stories whispered around fires. To those first humans, Megalania must have seemed like a spirit from a deeper world, a dragon that walked the earth. Its eyes, dark and unblinking, would have met theirs without fear. It would have known movement, scent, and sound, but perhaps not understanding. For the first time, it faced a creature that hunted with memory, that worked in groups, that built traps and carried fire. The air between them must have been charged with a kind of ancient recognition, instinct meeting awareness, the cold patience of prehistory meeting the spark of thought. Over time, as the world shifted again, Megalania's dominion began to fade. Climate change, shrinking forests, and the rise of human ingenuity all played their part. Fire reshaped the land, spears found their mark. The dragon's long reign began to slip quietly into the past, yet its image never left the human mind. Even now, thousands of years later, in the myths of the Aboriginal peoples, there are stories of giant reptiles that once hunted men, spirits of the earth and water that guarded sacred places. Perhaps they remember not just a myth, but a memory carried forward through time, the faint echo of a real creature that once shared the same ground. To imagine those last days is to feel the breath of deep time. A lone Megalania moving through a twilight forest, its scales warm with the last light of day. The sound of insects rising in chorus, the faint smoke of distant fires curling against the horizon. One world ending, another beginning. It was not defeated in battle. It simply faded, as all things do, into memory. But its legacy lingers in the scales of the Komodo dragon, in the movement of every monitor that still hunts in the sun, and in the human stories that still speak of dragons hidden beneath the earth. For a brief moment, humanity met its reflection from the ancient world, a creature of patience and instinct, power and stillness, and in that meeting, the line between past and present blurred. Megalania, the land dragon, was gone, but the memory of its gaze, calm and unbroken, still lingers in the bones of the earth. When the age of dragons and giants drew to a quiet close, the earth entered a softer rhythm. The heat that once fueled reptiles began to wane, and the balance of life slowly shifted. Across the continents, the nights grew longer, the seasons more defined. Where once the air had shimmered with the heavy warmth of ancient jungles, it now cooled into something more temperate, more welcoming to a new kind of creature. It was the mammals' turn. They had waited patiently through the long reign of the reptiles, surviving in burrows and shadows, small and unnoticed. Now, with the world's warmth ebbing just enough to favor endurance over scale, they emerged. Their bodies burned with an inner heat that no season could extinguish. They carried furnaces within them, warm blood, powered by food and fire. This gift changed everything. Mammals were creatures of motion and hunger. Unlike the cold-blooded reptiles, who basked and waited for the sun to return, these newcomers could move through chill and darkness. They did not depend on the world's warmth. They made their own. Their hearts beat faster, their bodies worked harder, and their need for food was constant. It was a trade, energy for freedom, appetite for adaptability, and in that trade, life found new possibilities. Across grasslands and forests, the descendants of once tiny survivors began to experiment with form. Some stretched into runners, their limbs lengthening for speed. Others curled into climbers, gripping branches with hands that could feel and hold. A few returned to the sea, their spines arching and limbs reshaping into fins once more. The mammalian blueprint was flexible, curious, restless. It did not settle into one shape for long. As the reptiles withdrew into the warmth of the tropics, the mammals spread across the globe. They learned to live beneath snow and among deserts, to hunt in the cold dawn and sleep through icy nights. They grew fur to trap heat, whiskers to sense movement, and minds quick enough to learn and remember. They were smaller than the reptiles that came before them, but faster, and their world rewarded speed. The earth itself seemed to favor this change. Volcanoes quieted, the great forests of the Mesozoic gave way to open plains. Temperature shifts became more dramatic, demanding creatures that could adjust quickly. Where the reptiles needed stability, the mammals thrived on unpredictability. Their warm blood was a torch against the cooling of the planet, a promise that life could keep moving even when the air grew cold. Still, the old reptilian lineages did not vanish. They retreated to the places where the warmth still lingered, the wetlands, the jungles, the deserts baked beneath the equatorial sun. There, the crocodiles, turtles, snakes, and lizards continued their quiet existence, holding to an ancient rhythm that had never failed them. They were no longer the rulers of the world, but they were not defeated. In the stillness of hot days, their scales gleamed as they basked, conserving energy, while the mammals raced restlessly above. The contrast between them was striking. Reptiles represented patience, silence, and endurance. They moved only when needed, wasting nothing. Mammals, in comparison, were restless fires, eating, moving, burning energy at every hour. The two designs embodied opposite philosophies of survival. One was the art of waiting, the other the art of chasing. As time passed, their worlds rarely overlapped. The reptiles ruled the heat, where their cold blood could thrive. The mammals conquered the cool, where their inner warmth gave them advantage. The planet, vast and varied, became a shared stage divided by temperature and time. Yet, there were places where the two met, along riverbanks where crocodiles still lurked beneath the surface, watching the herds that came to drink. In those quiet encounters, the old and the new regarded one another through unspoken memory. They had once been rivals in a world of giants, but now they existed in balance. Each followed a different truth written into their blood. The reptiles had chosen endurance, trusting in stillness and ancient instincts. The mammals had chosen movement, trusting in warmth and change. Neither was better, only different, two sides of the same story written by the same earth. And still, deep beneath the calm of this new balance, the old blueprint slept. Evolution does not forget. The same shapes and instincts that once ruled the world still waited in quiet corners of DNA, carried forward by both warm blood and cold. The competition between them was not a war but a conversation, a dialogue between two great strategies for life. In the golden light of evening, when a mammal's breath steamed in the air and a lizard lay soaking in the last warmth of the sun, the difference between them seemed almost poetic. One borrowed heat from the world, the other carried it within. Both were bound by the same pulse, the same planet, the same memory of creation. The age of reptiles had not ended. Not truly. It had simply shared its stage. The age of mammals was rising, bright and tireless, driven by the steady beat of warm hearts beneath fur and skin. Two blueprints, side by side, continued their quiet dance, one ancient and patient, the other swift and curious, each shaping the other, each reminding the earth that there is never only one way to be alive. In the wide and humid lowlands of ancient South America, the rivers did not flow quietly. Their waters were thick with heat and life, carrying the scent of decay and rain. Towering trees arched over the muddy banks, their roots twisting like veins through the soil. Insects shimmered in the sunlight that filtered through the canopy, and great herds of animals came to drink from the sluggish water. Beneath that calm surface, however, something older waited, a shadow that had survived every extinction, every change, every turn of the planet's long clock. The rivers of the Miocene belonged to the crocodiles, not the small, wary reptiles that glide through our modern swamps, but titans that stretched longer than city buses. They were the supercrocs, Purosaurus in South America and Sarcosuchus in Africa, creatures that looked like echoes of the Mesozoic, relics from the age when reptiles had ruled both land and sea. Yet, they were not ghosts of the past. They were proof that the old design had never faded, only waited for the world to warm again. Purosaurus was the largest of them, a monster that reached nearly 40 feet in length. It swam through the tropical wetlands that once covered what is now the Amazon basin. Its skull alone measured over 5 feet, a fortress of bone armed with rows of thick, conical teeth built not for slicing, but for crushing. Scientists estimate that its bite could deliver nearly the same force as a Tyrannosaurus rex, enough to shatter the shell of a giant turtle or snap the spine of a tapir-sized mammal. Imagine standing by that ancient riverbank. The air hums with insects. Frogs call in distant pools. Then, the water ripples, just slightly at first. A shape emerges, slow, silent, vast. Only the nostrils and eyes break the surface, following the movement of a thirsty animal. The prey bends down to drink, unaware that a living relic drifts just beneath the brown water. There is no roar, no warning, only an eruption of motion. The surface explodes, the jaws close, and the water swallows its secret once more. Purosaurus ruled this world with patience. It did not chase. It waited, as its ancestors had done for more than 200 million years. Time had taught it that stillness was a form of power. With a single lunge, it could pull creatures heavier than itself into the depths. Its lungs were vast, its heart slow and steady, its skin armored in bony plates that caught the sun when it rose to bask. In its shape and in its habits, it carried the perfection of an ancient plan, one that needed no change. Across the ocean, in Africa, Sarcosuchus had lived a similar life long before. It, too, was a giant of rivers, stretching nearly as long as a bus, with a skull longer than a man is tall. It lived in the Cretaceous, during the same age as the dinosaurs, yet it was not overshadowed by them. In the floodplains of prehistoric Africa, it shared its world with sauropods and predators, moving silently through muddy water, its body gliding beneath herds of enormous creatures that came to drink. The world around Sarcosuchus was hotter and harsher than that of Purosaurus, but the story was the same. It waited in silence, then struck with a violence so sudden it seemed to defy time. Its bite, too, was among the strongest forces nature ever produced, its jaw muscles anchored to massive bones built for crushing and holding. When it locked onto its prey, there was no escape. The water belonged to it. For millions of years, through extinction and renewal, through heat and cold, the crocodilian body plan endured. Short legs for stability, powerful tail for propulsion, nostrils and eyes positioned for ambush, armor thick enough to resist both attack and time. It was not beauty that made them eternal, but function. Evolution had already written the perfect equation for a semi-aquatic hunter. The river itself had sculpted them, and the river's physics never changed. Even now, modern crocodiles carry that ancient perfection within them. Though smaller than their monstrous ancestors, they move with the same grace and stillness. They hunt with the same patience, guided by instincts older than memory. Watching one glide through the shallows today is like peering into a window of deep time, where every ripple is connected to the rivers of the past. Purosaurus and Sarcosuchus were not accidents of nature, but reminders that success does not always demand change. The laws of water, weight, and weighting shaped them into forms that could not be improved upon. Where mammals and birds raced forward in endless variation, the crocodiles simply remained, untouched and unhurried. Their story is one of quiet mastery, not progress, proof that sometimes the greatest adaptation is to stop evolving at all. The river has always known what works. It favors stillness over speed, patience over pursuit. Within its muddy depths, the same eyes that watched dinosaurs drink once gazed upon early mammals, and, later, upon the ancestors of humankind. It is a line of survival, unbroken for hundreds of millions of years, carried forward in armor and silence. Beneath the rolling blue of the Miocene seas, the sunlight faded into a dim, endless world of motion and shadow. Warm currents drifted across the globe, carrying life to every corner of the oceans. Whales had grown vast, filling the seas with their haunting calls. Sharks had followed, drawn by the promise of endless prey. The surface shimmered with calm, but below, the deep held a quiet tension, a return of the ancient arms race that had once raged between marine reptiles of the Mesozoic. The war for the oceans had begun again, fought by new giants born from different bloodlines. In this new era, one name ruled the open water: Megalodon. It was a shark beyond imagination, perhaps the largest predator ever to live. Its teeth were longer than a man's hand, thick and serrated, shaped to shear through bone and flesh alike. Its body stretched more than 50 feet from snout to tail, and its jaws could crush a small car with a single bite. When it swam, the water seemed to move with it, a dark mass gliding silently beneath the waves. Everything in its path, seals, whales, even other sharks, was prey. For millions of years, Megalodon had been the undisputed master of the seas. It hunted with precision, striking from below, lifting its enormous bulk with terrifying speed. The kill was clean and efficient. One bite to disable, one to finish. It was a creature of physics and instinct, built for power, guided by the simplicity of hunger. But the ocean, like the land, never stays still. In time, another giant rose to challenge the shark's reign. This hunter was not a fish, but a mammal, a descendant of the gentle whales that once fed on plankton and krill. It was called Leviathan, named for the biblical sea monster, and its body carried echoes of its terrestrial ancestors. It breathed air, birthed live young, and hunted with a mammal's cunning. Yet when it struck, it did so with a violence that rivaled any reptile that had ever ruled the seas. Leviathan melvillei was a melia, whale with teeth as long as kitchen knives and jaws capable of generating enormous pressure. It reached lengths of 50 to 60 feet, with a skull built for ramming and tearing. Unlike modern sperm whales, which dive deep to hunt squid in darkness, Leviathan hunted in the light, stalking other whales, including the young and the slow. Its teeth were rooted in both jaws, a rare trait among whales, allowing it to seize prey with the same precision as a shark. It was a predator that used intelligence and coordination, striking from behind or below, attacking in groups or alone depending on the opportunity. In the Miocene seas, these two giants, the warm-blooded whale and the cold-blooded shark, shared the same empire. They were not constant enemies, but their territories overlapped, and their prey was the same. Somewhere in those vast tropical waters, their paths must have crossed. Imagine it, the silence of the deep, the muted flash of movement in the blue, the sudden meeting of power and instinct. The ocean itself seemed to hold its breath. The collision of these two predators was not a battle of good and evil, nor even of dominance. It was the universe repeating one of its oldest patterns, the arms race between predator and prey, between hunter and rival, between one body perfected by time and another refined by necessity. Millions of years earlier, marine reptiles like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs had played the same roles. Now, the blueprint had returned in different forms. Flesh warm instead of cold, breath drawn from air instead of gills, but the story the same. Both creatures were products of evolution's patience. Megalodon was the architect of raw efficiency, a machine tuned to power, all instinct and speed. Leviathan was the strategist, a thinking predator, capable of planning and learning. The shark ruled with its bite, the whale with its brain. Each was an answer to the same question the ocean had asked for eons. What shape must power take to survive in? Water? Their world was one of abundance, and for a time, both thrived. Fossilized whale bones from the Miocene often bear the scars of their struggle, deep gouges where Leviathan's teeth tore through bone, and circular fractures that match the crushing bites of Megalodon. They are the signatures of giants, written across the skeletons of the ocean's fallen. But as the world cooled and sea levels dropped, the balance began to shift once again. Leviathan, with its dependence on warm waters and rich prey, faded first. Megalodon lingered longer, following the migration routes of whales as they moved toward the poles, until the changing temperatures finally ended its reign too. The arms race ended not with a victor, but with silence. The ocean moved on, its surface calm once more, and yet their shapes remain in memory. The great white shark carries a smaller version of Megalodon's design, its teeth like miniature echoes of that prehistoric blade. The sperm whale, with its immense head and deep-diving prowess, still sings with the same lineage as Leviathan. The sea does not forget its titans, it simply reshapes them for the next age. For a brief moment in Earth's long story, the ocean had mirrored its own past. The war that once belonged to the reptiles had been rewritten by mammals and sharks, fought again in the silence beneath the waves. Two giants, one born of cold, one of warmth, met in the ancient blue, and the sea remembered what it meant to fear its own depths. If one were to step back far enough, beyond the clutter of time and the shifting of continents, and look at life as a whole, a quiet truth would begin to appear. The Earth has been rewriting the same story over and over. Across the ages, through fire, ice, and extinction, the shapes of life keep returning. Wings that slice through air, fins that carve through water, eyes that search the light, jaws that close with power and grace. It is not imitation, it is inevitability. This rhythm of repetition is called convergent evolution. It is nature's way of finding the same answers to the same questions. Faced with the same problems, life often reaches for the same solutions, guided not by memory or will, but by the silent logic of physics and form. Every environment, every element, shapes its inhabitants. The air demands lightness and lift. The sea demands streamlining. The land demands strength and balance. In each of these worlds, there are only so many ways to move, to eat, to see, to survive. Across deep time, evolution has wandered endlessly, yet again and again, it circles back to familiar designs, to what works. Consider the shark and the dolphin. One is a fish, born from scales and gills. The other is a mammal, descended from land dwellers who once walked on four legs. Yet when they swim side by side, their shapes are nearly identical, sleek, tapered, curved for speed. Their bodies have been sculpted by the same invisible artist, the flow of water. In that shared current, ancestry matters less than efficiency. The ocean allows only certain shapes to glide without waste. The rest are forgotten. The same pattern repeats across the sky. Birds, bats, and even ancient flying reptiles all built their wings differently, yet their silhouettes, seen against the light, are near twins. Feathers, skin, and bone may differ, but the laws of lift and drag remain constant. A wing that catches air must curve. A body that flies must narrow. Even the spaces between the feathers or fingers obey the same physics. Nature, guided by air and gravity, sketches the same outline every time it learns to fly. In deserts, where heat presses down and water hides, different creatures across the world evolve the same armor. Lizards, beetles, and even plants mirror one another, wearing shades of sand and spines of defense. In the cold, fur grows thicker, shapes rounder, hearts slower. It is not creativity that drives this. It is necessity, the quiet sculptor that works through time. To the human mind, this repetition might seem unoriginal, as though evolution lacked imagination, but in truth, it reveals something deeper. The universe itself has rules, and life, no matter how free it seems, must play within them. Gravity, temperature, pressure, and light form the boundaries of a cosmic game. Within those boundaries, infinite forms are possible, yet only a few will endure. That is why, when one looks through fossils, a kind of symmetry appears. The great marine reptiles of the Mesozoic, the sharks of the Paleogene, the whales of today, all share the same body plan. The long snout, the fluke tail, the hidden limbs folded within. Different creatures, same solution. The blueprint repeats because it must. Even on land, the echoes continue. Saber-toothed predators have risen at least 5 separate times across history, in marsupials, in cats, even in ancient reptiles. Each time, evolution reinvented the same curved fangs, the same muscular shoulders, the same ambush tactics. When prey grows thick-skinned, predators sharpen their tools. When forests spread, herbivores grow tall necks and wide stomachs. The pattern loops endlessly. There is a strange comfort in this predictability. It means that life, for all its chaos, follows a quiet order. It adapts, yes, but always within the same frame. In this sense, the earth itself is an artist with a favorite style, revisiting themes, refining details, perfecting the familiar. Each extinction, each rebirth is not a random restart, but a variation on a melody that never truly ends. Even intelligence, perhaps, is part of this law. Octopuses in the oceans and primates on land developed complex minds, problem-solving skills, and curiosity, though separated by 500 million years of evolution. Their brains are different in shape, yet similar in purpose. Thought itself may be another convergence, the inevitable outcome of a universe that rewards awareness. Convergent evolution reminds us that repetition is not stagnation, it is harmony. The same forces that shape the tides, the same mathematics that govern flight and light, sculpt every living thing that has ever existed. Life's beauty lies not only in its diversity, but in its restraint, in the way it finds elegance through limitation. Somewhere within the DNA of every creature, there is a quiet echo of all that has ever lived. Not because one remembers another, but because the Earth's laws remember for them. The same pressures, the same possibilities, the same shapes returning like verses in a song that never forgets its tune. This is the hidden law of convergence, the physics of inevitability, the poetry of repetition. It tells us that life, though endlessly creative, is also bound by the same patterns that guide the stars, the waves, and the wind. And perhaps that is the most comforting truth of all, that in the vastness of change, there is always something familiar waiting to be found again. Across the long memory of the earth, there has always been a rhythm, a deep and patient pulse that no creature can hear, but all must obey. It is the rhythm of warmth and cold, of expansion and retreat, of the planet breathing in heat and out in ice. Through this slow pendulum, life has risen, fallen, and risen again. The balance of power has shifted countless times, not through war or will, but through temperature. When the world grows warm, the reptiles awaken. Their blood, guided by the sun, quickens. Their muscles respond with power and grace. Forests stretch higher, swamps expand, and humidity fills the air like a living mist. Heat feeds them. It lifts the limits that cold-blooded creatures must endure. In these epochs, the earth hums with the deep stillness of reptiles, patient, ancient, and enduring. But when the warmth fades, when snow begins to linger on the mountains and ice spreads across the poles, the rule passes quietly to another kind of life. Mammals step forward, wrapped in fur, hearts burning with inner fire. They do not wait for the sun. They carry it within them. In the chill of night, they move while others sleep. In the silence of winter, they continue their endless work. The story of life can be read as the story of this pendulum, of warmth and cold trading dominion, of creatures shaped and reshaped by the changing breath of the planet. Millions of years ago, when the atmosphere was thick with carbon and the world's average temperature far higher than today's, the reptiles were ascendant. The air shimmered with heat, the forests steamed, and the swamps sang with insects and frogs. Crocodiles basked in northern rivers that now lie frozen beneath tundra. Turtles the size of tables floated in equatorial waters. Lizards grew to monstrous size, their bodies wide and heavy, their movements slow but unstoppable. The warmth gave them endurance, strength, and dominance. In those times, life was unhurried, energy was abundant, and evolution's pace seemed to slow, as if the planet itself had grown lazy in the heat. Reptiles flourished, not through speed, but through stillness. They were creatures of equilibrium, conserving energy until the moment it was needed. Their skin reflected sunlight. Their blood flowed with warmth borrowed from the air. They were living mirrors of the Earth's climate, calm, sun-fed, and perfectly adapted to its steady heat. But warmth cannot last forever. The Earth, pulled by the delicate dance of its orbit and the slow grinding of its continents, began to cool again. Ice crept down from the poles, inch by inch, century by century. Seas withdrew, forests thinned, the air grew dry and sharp. And in this cooling, new rhythms of life began to appear. The mammals, once small and hidden, found their moment. In the cold, they thrived. Their warm blood allowed them to move when others stilled. Their fur held in heat, their hearts burned with constant motion. While reptiles waited for the sun, mammals chased the light itself, across snowy fields, through cold forests, into the wind. The energy they carried came from within, a quiet fire that never went out. The world that followed was one of endurance and innovation. Intelligence flourished. Warm-blooded creatures needed more energy, and so they hunted, gathered, learned. They built shelters and stored food. They began to think ahead. In cold, survival favors foresight. Each breath became a calculation, each heartbeat a choice. The pendulum continued to swing. During warmer interludes, reptiles would return in force, reclaiming the tropics and pushing north. During colder epochs, mammals would dominate again, spreading into new lands, filling the silence left behind by retreating reptiles. The pattern repeated endlessly, a gentle seesaw that shaped the history of the biosphere. Even today, remnants of this cycle remain. In the tropics, reptiles still reign. Crocodiles slide through muddy rivers, their patience older than time. Lizards bask on stones, their stillness as ancient as the first sunlight that touched the planet's face. But in the colder regions, where frost bites and snow settles, mammals hold sway. Foxes running across tundra, bears sleeping through frozen months, humans tending fires that mimic the warmth the planet once gave freely. If one could zoom out and watch Earth from afar, not for years or centuries, but for millions of years, the pattern would look like breathing. With every warm exhalation, life spreads, grows, and slows into reptilian calm. With every cold inhalation, it tightens, quickens, and fills with mammalian fire. It is not a war, but a rhythm, a balance written into the laws of climate and biology. And somewhere between these two extremes, life finds its most creative moments. When the warmth begins to fade and the cold begins to grow, the world becomes uncertain. It is in those in-between times that evolution does its finest work, reshaping, experimenting, blending the lessons of both bloods. The temperature of power, then, is not fixed. It moves with the turning of the earth and the tilt of its axis. Warmth favors stillness and patience. Cold favors movement and thought. Both are necessary. Both are beautiful. Through every rise and fall of temperature, through every breath of ice and fire, the planet continues its slow, eternal pendulum. Life adjusts, learns, and survives, each era carrying within it the memory of the last and the promise of the next. The earth breathes on, in heat and in cold, in rhythm and in balance. In the calm that followed the reign of reptiles and the surge of the mammals, a quiet transformation took place. The forests that once echoed with the sounds of scales and claws now stirred with the flutter of feathers. The world had changed, but the blueprint remained. Where claws once struck, talons now walked. Where roars once carried, calls and songs began to fill the air. Yet among those new voices, a few sounded deeper, older, reminders that the age of the dinosaurs had never truly ended. It was in this world that the great birds arose. Among them stood Gastornis, a creature that blurred the line between what was gone and what remained. Towering over most mammals of its time, it reached nearly 7 feet tall, its body built for power rather than flight. Its wings were small and heavy, unsuited for the air, but its legs, thick and muscular, carried it across the forest floor with a stride, both graceful and deliberate. Its beak, wide and strong, curved downward like a polished blade. For millions of years after the Great Extinction, Gastornis ruled the woodlands of Europe and North America. The world was still recovering from the chaos that had ended the dinosaurs, and the mammals, though growing, were not yet the rulers they would become. Into this space stepped these feathered giants, descendants of survivors that had once soared through the late Cretaceous skies. They had traded the air for the ground, filling the empty niches left by the fallen raptors. To see one in its time would have been to witness both memory and rebirth. Its feathers were thick and coarse, blending into the muted greens and browns of the forest. Its eyes, large and intelligent, watched the undergrowth for movement. Its head tilted slightly with each step, the way modern birds still do, listening not with its ears but through the subtle tremors in the earth. We once imagined Gastornis as a hunter, a terror bird stalking early mammals through misty forests, crushing bone with its beak. For years, paleontologists pictured it as a feathered echo of the predatory dinosaurs that had once ruled the land. Yet, the evidence began to tell a gentler story. Its beak, though strong, showed signs of grinding rather than tearing. Its jaw muscles, powerful but not swift, were suited for crushing tough plant matter rather than flesh. The giant bird, it seemed, was not a killer, but a grazer, a forager that walked the same paths as herbivores, using its size as protection rather than aggression. Still, its presence carried weight. When smaller creatures crossed its path, they froze, unsure of what stood before them. The shape was familiar, the posture, the gaze, the way it moved. To them, it might have seemed as though the dinosaurs had returned. Across the southern hemisphere, similar giants appeared. In South America, the phorusrhacids, true terror birds, became the apex hunters of their lands. In Australia, the dromornithids, sometimes called demon ducks, filled the Facefleewaseinpreisen. Each continent had its own lineage of these feathered colossi, each echoing the designs of a much older age. The air of the Mesozoic had thinned, the climate cooled, yet the rhythm of evolution still remembered the old patterns. The birds had inherited more than just the earth. They had inherited the gift of adaptation. Feathers, once meant for warmth and display, became tools for survival in countless ways. Some species turned them to flight, escaping the ground entirely. Others, like Gastornis, used them for insulation, keeping steady in the cool dawns and dusky evenings. In their bones and breath, they carried the past forward quietly, without grandeur or resistance. When the first true mammals began to grow bolder, the world shifted again. The great birds gradually gave way to faster, more versatile hunters. Gastornis and its kin vanished into the fossil record, leaving behind footprints pressed into ancient mud, long strides that spoke of balance, patience, and quiet dominion. Yet they left something more lasting than their bones. Every sparrow, every hawk, every penguin still carries their legacy. The shape of the beak, the pattern of muscle beneath the feathers, the tilt of the head, all trace back to those early survivors who refused to let the design of the dinosaurs fade away. Evolution had found a new way to tell an old story. Even now, when a heron steps through the shallows or an ostrich strides across the plains, there is a whisper of Gastornis in its form, the same steady gait, the same patient stillness, the same quiet confidence of a creature perfectly in tune with its world. In the long dream of life, the age of feathers did not erase the age of scales. It continued it, softened it, carried it gently into the present. The dinosaurs had not vanished. They had simply learned to walk again, lighter, quieter, and with the wind always brushing through their feathers. And so, in the forests of deep time, the feathered giants walked. They were not monsters nor myths, but memories made real, the living proof that the earth never truly forgets its greatest designs. When the world begins again, when forests grow from ash and seas breathe after silence, it is almost always the reptiles who return first. They emerge from the cracks and the shadows, from the edges of rivers and the hollows of stone. They move slowly, their scales warm beneath the sun, their eyes calm and unblinking. They do not rush to reclaim the world. They simply wait, as they always have, for the planet to steady itself once more. Through every extinction and upheaval, through heat and frost, it has been the reptiles who endure. They are not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the cleverest, yet they have outlasted the chaos of time itself. They have survived fire and ice, poison and hunger, and every great resetting of life's rhythm. Their secret is not dominance. It is efficiency. Reptiles waste nothing. They are masters of stillness, of balance between energy and survival. Where a mammal must eat constantly to feed the fire within its blood, a reptile can live for weeks, without food, drawing from reserves built through patience. Their hearts beat slower, their breaths come gently, their lives stretch long. The heat of the sun powers them, and when that warmth fades, they simply rest. This efficiency gives them a strange kind of immortality. While other creatures struggle to sustain their constant hunger, reptiles can retreat into the deep quiet of waiting. A crocodile can go months without a meal. A tortoise can live for more than a century, its pulse so steady that time itself seems to move around it. Even in the most hostile deserts, lizards survive by slowing the rhythm of their existence to match the heartbeat of the land. Patience is their weapon. It is what allowed them to survive the firestorms that ended the age of dinosaurs and the long winters that followed. When the skies darkened and food vanished, they did not panic or perish. They waited, hidden in water, mud, or stone, until the light returned. Mammals scurried and starved. Birds fled or fell. But the reptiles simply endured, their bodies tuned to scarcity, their minds made for stillness. There is an elegance in this way of life, a kind of quiet logic that has carried them through epochs. They are creatures of limits, thriving not by excess, but by restraint. In every breath and movement, they do only what is necessary, no more, no less. Their patience is matched only by their resilience. Their bodies are built to bend with the world's changes, not resist them. When the climate warms, they spread. When it cools, they retreat. They have no need to conquer, only to persist. It is why their lineage stretches so far back into prehistory, beyond the rise of mammals, beyond the dinosaurs themselves, into a time when the earth was still finding its shape. Even their design reflects this wisdom. Scales hold moisture and deflect heat. Their hearts can slow to conserve energy. Their blood adapts to temperature and scarcity. They are living examples of evolution's most enduring rule. Survive not by speed, but by simplicity. Where mammals burn bright, reptiles glow steady. The warmth within a mammal is like a fire that must always be fed, even when the world turns cold. The reptile, instead, borrows warmth from the sun, storing it, savoring it, releasing it only when needed. The difference is subtle but profound. One depends on constant consumption, the other on harmony with the environment itself. And so, when the world burns, they wait. When it cools, they return. Their rhythm matches that of the earth, not in defiance of it, but in sync. They have seen the continents drift apart, the oceans rise and fall, the sky shift from blue to black and back again. To them, extinction is not an ending, it is a pause. Their presence through history is a kind of quiet reassurance that life will always find its way back. In the bones of crocodiles, in the shells of turtles, in the flick of a lizard's tongue, the same ancient pattern continues. The world changes, but they do not. They have found perfection not through progress, but through patience. In jungles, deserts, and swamps, their stillness endures. A crocodile basking on a riverbank could be a creature from any age, Triassic, Cretaceous, or modern. The air hums, the sun warms its back, and the slow pulse beneath its armor beats to a rhythm that has not changed in hundreds of millions of years. Reptiles remind the planet of its oldest lesson, that survival is not about speed or struggle, but about knowing when to move and when to rest. They have no need for conquest because time itself is their ally. In every age, in every cycle, they return, quiet, patient, unchanged. When the world burns, they wait. When it cools, they return. Across the wide blue skin of the planet, Where the continents fall away into water, lie the islands, small worlds adrift between sea and sky. To those who visit them, they seem fragile, even temporary, as if one great wave could erase them forever. Yet in truth, they are some of Earth's most important places. Islands are where evolution slows its breathing, where nature experiments quietly, reshaping life in strange and beautiful ways. They are Earth's memory chambers, pockets of the past preserved by isolation. When a species reaches an island, it steps outside the rhythm of the mainland. Here, there are fewer competitors, fewer predators, fewer rules. The old hierarchies of life dissolve, and in their place, new possibilities unfold. Size, speed, and behavior are rewritten not by dominance, but by balance. Large creatures shrink to fit the land's limits. Small creatures grow to fill its empty spaces. Over time, entire ecosystems become quiet experiments in scale and survival. The islands of the Pacific, the Galapagos, and the Indonesian archipelago are among the most extraordinary of these natural laboratories. Each one tells a slightly different story, shaped by its age, its isolation, and the creatures that found their way to its shores. On the islands of Indonesia, evolution's experiments produced giants. Here, in the Lesser Sunda Islands, lives the Komodo dragon, the largest lizard on Earth. It can reach 10 feet from snout to tail, weighing more than 100 kilograms. Yet it moves with slow precision, its forked tongue tasting the air for the scent of prey. In this world of limited land and limited predators, size became an advantage. No large mammals competed for dominance, so the dragons grew to fill the role of apex hunters, their venomous bite ensuring that even animals much larger than themselves could not escape their patience. Komodo, Rinca, and Flores are islands built from volcanic stone shaped by fire and sea. For millions of years, they drifted on the edge of Asia's tectonic heart, carrying with them fragments of older worlds. Their heat, their dryness, and their isolation created a setting where reptiles could thrive long after their decline elsewhere. The dragons that walk there today are not relics of the dinosaurs, but their echoes, proof that the earth, in its secluded corners, still remembers how to build monsters. Far across the ocean, another group of islands was performing its own quiet miracles. The Galapagos, a necklace of volcanic peaks scattered off the coast of South America, became a crucible for diversity. When early explorers first set foot there, they found creatures that seemed familiar, yet subtly different. Giant tortoises lumbered across the black rock plains, their shells curved like domes of ancient temples. Finches, lizards, and iguanas filled every niche of the land, each species adapted to its own small piece of the islands. Here, evolution's experiments leaned toward gigantism and specialization. With no large predators to threaten them, tortoises grew enormous, slow, and wise in their movements. They could live for centuries, their memories stretching across generations. The iguanas took to the sea, learning to dive for algae and hold their breath beneath the waves. The birds became explorers of their own, each species of finch evolving a different beak for a different task, one for seeds, another for insects, another for fruit. Every island became its own version of a world, small but complete. Time flowed differently here. With the sea as a barrier, change happened in solitude, guided by the quiet hands of adaptation. On the mainland, competition was fierce and constant, but on islands, life could take its time. It could pause, reflect, and evolve in directions that seemed almost whimsical. The phenomenon of island gigantism and dwarfism, where small animals grow larger and large animals grow smaller, reveals the delicate logic of isolation. On islands, resources are finite, and so are the dangers. A small creature with no predators can grow large without fear. A large creature with limited food must shrink to survive. Nature adjusts its scales, finding harmony with each environment's size and strength. On Flores, near the home of the Komodo dragon, even humans once joined this pattern. Fossils discovered in a limestone cave revealed a small species of ancient people, Homo floresiensis, standing barely over 3 feet tall. They lived alongside the dragons and other island creatures, a reminder that the rules of evolution spare no species. Isolation reshapes everything, even us. Across the Pacific, the islands continued this quiet work. Some hosted birds that lost the gift of flight, trading their wings for powerful legs and safe ground. Others gave rise to new reptiles, insects, and plants found nowhere else on Earth. In each of these places, the island itself was both stage and sculptor, guiding life with the slow patience of solitude. If the continents are the grand theaters of evolution, then the islands are its laboratories, intimate, detailed, and fragile. They preserve what the larger world forgets. They remind us what life looks like when it is left to think in peace. To stand on an island's shore is to feel time moving differently. The waves crash in rhythm, but the world beyond seems far away. The air smells of salt and old stone. The creatures here have no memory of continents, no awareness of the wider struggle. They live in balance, each adapted to the boundaries of their world. The islands are not fragments of the Earth's story. They are its reflections, small mirrors that hold the memory of what life once was and what it still dreams of becoming. On quiet mornings along the islands of Indonesia, the air feels heavy with warmth. Mist rises from the grasslands, curling through the trees, and the stillness is broken only by the rustle of dry leaves and the soft hiss of scales against stone. From the shadows, something stirs, slow, deliberate, ancient. The Komodo dragon steps into the light, its tongue flicks, tasting the air for scent. Each motion is measured, as if time itself has slowed to match its rhythm. The muscles beneath its skin ripple with quiet strength, its scales glimmering with a dull, metallic sheen. It is not just an animal of the present, but a memory brought to life, an echo of an age that never truly ended. The Komodo dragon is the largest living lizard on Earth, a giant that can grow more than 10 feet long. Yet what makes it remarkable is not just its size, but its nature. It hunts with patience, moving through its territory with the calm of something that has never needed to hurry. Its vision is sharp, its tongue sensitive to the faintest trace of blood, and its bite carries venom that lowers blood pressure and slows the heartbeat of its prey. Once it bites, the outcome is inevitable. The dragon does not chase, it waits. That stillness, that deliberate way of living, feels like a signature left behind by deep time. The same patience once belonged to the ancient reptiles that ruled the Mesozoic. When the world was hot and the air was thick, predators like this perfected the art of waiting. The Komodo dragon continues that story, written not in fossil bone, but in living muscle and scale. Further north, where rivers wind through the mangroves and meet the open sea, another descendant of that ancient design patrols its watery kingdom. The saltwater crocodile, silent, immense, and older than any empire humanity has built. It is a creature that seems almost carved from stone, its skin patterned in ridges and plates that shimmer bronze under the sun. Yet beneath that armor lies one of nature's most refined predators. The saltwater crocodile can reach lengths of over 20 feet, its jaw pressure strong enough to crush a turtle's shell. But it, too, is defined not by chaos, but by control. It glides through estuaries with no ripple to mark its passing. Its eyes, half submerged, track every movement on the surface. When it strikes, it does so in silence, a burst of stored energy that transforms still water into thunder. And then, just as quickly, the world goes still again. Crocodiles have existed for more than 200 million years, surviving every great extinction. They have seen the continents split and drift, the seas rise and fall, the skies darken and clear. They have outlasted the great reptiles that once overshadowed them, not by adapting constantly, but by staying nearly the same. In their shape and their way of life, they are the living fossils of a design that perfection never needed to alter. In the heart of South America, in the slow moving waters of the Amazon, another echo of that age coils beneath the surface. The anaconda, vast, patient, silent. Its body moves like water itself, muscles flowing beneath smooth green skin. It hunts by feel and by heat, waiting among reeds until something warm passes too close. Then, in a sudden wave of strength, it wraps and constricts, crushing bone and stopping breath. Unlike the dragon or the crocodile, the anaconda kills without teeth or venom. It relies entirely on power, pure muscle, honed by evolution's oldest lessons. It lives where sunlight filters in through tangled canopies, where the air is damp and heavy. Here, surrounded by life both ancient and new, the serpent continues the story that began long before the first mammals walked the earth. Each of these creatures, the Komodo dragon, the saltwater crocodile, the anaconda, carries a thread of the same lineage. They are not remnants of the past, but living continuations of it. Their bodies, their behaviors, and their bodies, silence all belong to a world that was once dominated by scales and patience, by creatures that hunted not with speed, but with certainty. In them, the Mesozoic still breathes. You can see it in the sway of the dragon's tail, in the slow blink of the crocodile's golden eyes, in the ripple of the anaconda as it moves through still water. They are living reminders that the story of the dinosaurs did not end in ash and fire. It shifted, it softened, and it survived in these enduring forms. The world they inhabit now is different, smaller, colder, ruled by warm-blooded creatures who walk upright and build cities. Yet they remain untouched by time's urgency. They live by the same rhythm that carried their ancestors across oceans of prehistory. They hunt, they rest, they wait. To stand near one is to feel that rhythm again, the heartbeat of a planet that once belonged entirely to them. Their stillness is not emptiness, it is the weight of memory. It is the patience of evolution, alive and unbroken. The dragons of the modern world are not myth, they are real, and they are here. The earth never truly let them go. It simply found new ways to keep them close, to keep the memory of its oldest empire alive, scaled, silent, and watching. If you step back far enough to watch the great timeline of life unfold, you begin to notice something quiet but certain. Patterns. Over and over, the same body shapes, the same wings, the same fins and jaws and tails appear, separated by millions of years, as though nature were retracing its own lines. It feels like memory, like the earth itself remembers what worked before. But it is not memory. It is something deeper, something written into the laws that shape everything, from the fall of an apple to the flight of a bird. Evolution does not remember. It repeats because the math stays the same. Every creature that ever lived was sculpted not by thought or intention, but by physics, by the quiet insistence of balance, weight, pressure, and energy. The rules of the universe never changed. Gravity still pulls the same way. Water still resists in the same way. Air still thickens with speed. And because of that, the designs that once ruled the ancient world find their way back again and again. In the oceans, Bodies long and narrow move through the water with least resistance. That is why fish, dolphins, and even extinct reptiles like ichthyosaurs all share the same sleek, teardrop shape. Each of them, born from entirely different ancestors, was guided by the same mathematics of motion. Water allowed only one kind of perfection, and every creature that mastered it was drawn toward that shape. On land, weight and balance speak their own language. A creature that walks must spread its weight efficiently, keeping its center of gravity steady. It is why so many of Earth's predators, from the raptors of the Mesozoic to the cats of the modern age, share the same crouched, forward leaning stance. The design of a hunter is not a memory from the past, but a product of necessity. To chase, to leap, to strike, all obey the same equations. Even in the sky, the limits are universal. Air only allows wings of certain shapes to truly soar. That is why bats, birds, and even the great pterosaurs of prehistory all found the same solution: a long leading edge, a curved surface, a hollow skeleton light enough to rise but strong enough to resist collapse. Three very different lineages, yet each one carried by the same invisible hand. These recurring forms are not accidents, nor are they signs of a conscious design. They are the outcome of natural selection, meeting the unchanging framework of the physical world. When life faces the same problems, how to swim, how to fly, how to walk, it reaches for the same answers. The blueprint persists because the universe only offers so many ways to solve the puzzles of survival. The balance between energy and motion also decides what can exist. Large bodies need more food and energy. Small ones lose heat faster. The atmosphere's thickness, the planet's gravity, and even the distance from the sun all play a role in deciding what life can look like. On Earth, gravity limits how tall trees can grow and how large land animals can be before their own bones give way. It is the same force that once grounded the dinosaurs and now keeps elephants and whales within the limits of what is possible. In the end, it is not imagination that brings back these ancient designs, but mathematics. When an animal takes shape inside an egg or womb, its growth follows patterns written in numbers, spirals of shells, branching veins of leaves, the ratios of bone lengths that allow limbs to move efficiently. These are not chosen by evolution, they are discovered by it, like melodies waiting in silence, ready to be played again whenever conditions align. From this perspective, the persistence of the blueprint becomes something even more beautiful. It means that life, in all its endless forms, is bound together by the same simple truths. The fins of a shark, the wings of a swallow, the stride of a lizard, each one is a different way of speaking the same universal language. Even extinction cannot silence that language for long. When the world resets itself after disaster, the equations remain. The sunlight still falls at the same angle. The air still carries weight. The seas still curve with the pull of the moon. And when life begins again, it follows those same invisible paths, rebuilding what once worked, guided by forces that have never changed. To think of evolution as memory is to imagine that life dreams of its past, but the truth is gentler and more profound. It does not remember the dinosaurs, nor the reptiles, nor any shape that came before. It simply flows through the channels carved by physics, by energy, by the laws that hold everything together. Every wing, every scale, every heartbeat is part of that flow, repeating not because of nostalgia, but because the world itself makes sense in patterns. The blueprint of life endures not as a story retold, but as a law obeyed. And in that realization, the line between past and present begins to fade. The creatures of today are not echoes of what once was. They are continuations of the same equation, unfolding softly, endlessly, beneath the same patient sun. If you could listen closely enough, beneath the hum of wind and the slow drift of the seas, you would hear it, a pulse, the heartbeat of the earth itself. It is not made of sound but of rhythm, a deep geological breath that rises and falls over millions of years. With each inhale, warmth spreads across the continents, melting ice, greening deserts, and filling the air with heat and life. With each exhale, the cold returns, pulling the warmth away, locking the world in silence and frost. This is the pulse of the planet, the rhythm that has guided life's great cycles since the beginning. Geologists have found this pattern written in stone, layer by layer, in cliffs, in seabeds, in the fossils buried deep within them. The Earth's long memory reveals a steady alternation between warmth and cold. These climate swings are not random. They are driven by the slow turning of the planet's orbit, the shifting of its axis, the drifting of its continents, and the breathing of its atmosphere. Together, they create a rhythm of renewal and retreat, an ancient pattern of heat and ice that never stops, only slows. In the warm epochs, life flourishes in extravagant abundance. The poles thaw, seas rise, and jungles stretch toward the horizon. Reptiles, those children of the sun, thrive in these ages. The warmth fuels their blood, their bodies, their hunger. The world becomes a vast green paradise where cold-blooded life can grow large and fearless. Crocodiles glide through river deltas that reach nearly to the poles. Lizards and snakes spread into new territories, reclaiming spaces once sealed by ice. The heat does not just nurture them, it restores them. But warmth never lasts forever. Slowly, the pendulum swings back. The earth tilts, currents shift, and the breath of the planet cools once more. Ice creeps outward from the poles, inch by inch, reshaping the land. The great reptilian empires shrink. The warmth that powered their blood fades, and the mammals, smaller, faster, and fueled from within, begin to rise again. In the cold ages, fur replaces scales, warm blood becomes the advantage. This balance, repeated countless times, is not a battle between reptiles and mammals, but a conversation between climate and life. When the world warms, the reptiles return to dominance, spreading like sunlight. When it cools, the mammals inherit the silence. Each age makes way for the next, and the pattern continues, steady and patient. The geological record shows dozens of these cycles. During the Triassic and Jurassic periods, the planet's warmth soared, and reptiles ruled every corner of the world. Later, in the Paleocene and Eocene epochs, warmth surged again, and giants like Titanoboa and massive crocodiles reclaimed their places as kings of the wetlands. Then came cooling, the slow exhalation of the earth. Ice returned, and mammals spread north and south, adapting to the chill. Each swing of temperature redraws the map of life. In the warmth, rainforests stretch across continents. In the cold, grasslands and tundra take their place. Rivers shift, coastlines move, and species must either move with them or fade away. Yet through every turn of this ancient pendulum, life endures, transforming, adapting, waiting for the warmth to return. It is a story of balance, but also of inevitability. The planet has always lived by this rhythm, and every creature that has ever called it home has felt its influence. The cold tests endurance. The warmth rewards patience. Reptiles, with their ability to slow down, to survive on little, to wait out the hard times, have always been ready when the warmth comes again. Their survival is a quiet testament to the power of adaptation and timing. In this rhythm, there is no villain and no hero. The cold is not cruelty, the warmth is not mercy. Both are part of the same breath, the same cycle of creation and rest. Earth's climate is not a static background, but a living system, a vast, slow dance between sunlight, air, and ocean. Even now, we can see traces of this rhythm continuing. The ice that once gripped the poles has begun to retreat again, and warmth spreads where it had been locked away for ages. Reptiles move northward once more. Crocodiles bask farther from the equator. Lizards and snakes colonize new regions. As temperatures climb, the ancient blueprint begins to reawaken, following the same physical laws, the same quiet mathematics that have guided it for millions of years. To study the Earth's past is to recognize this pulse, to see that climate is not a straight line but a wave, forever rising and falling. Life does not resist this motion. It moves with it, shaped and reshaped by each turn. The reptile's story is written within that motion, in perfect rhythm with the warmth that gave them life. And though we live in a world of cities and machines, the pulse still beats beneath our feet. The ground remembers every warming, every cooling, every breath of the beast, planet's long and patient life. To listen to it is to understand that change is not chaos, but continuity, the same steady rhythm that has always carried the world forward, one heartbeat at a time. There was a time when the poles were not white, when the Arctic and the Antarctic were not kingdoms of ice and silence, but lands of rivers, forests, and life. To imagine it is to unfreeze time itself, to let the glaciers melt away and see what the world once was when the breath of warmth reached even the edges of the planet. In the high latitudes, where today the air burns with cold and the ground never thaws, scientists have uncovered fossils that tell a story both astonishing and humbling. Deep in the frozen soil of Canada and the Arctic islands, and across ancient sediments of Siberia, lie the remains of crocodiles, turtles, and lush plants that once thrived beneath long polar days and endless twilight nights. These creatures were not visitors. They lived there, raised their young there, hunted and basked beneath a sun that never truly set. The rocks hold the memory of a very different Arctic. Around 55 million years ago, during a time known as the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, the Earth's climate reached one of its warmest states since the age of the dinosaurs. The poles, instead of being wrapped in frost, were draped in forests of cypress and dawn redwood. The air was humid, the soil soft with moss and ferns, and the rivers teemed with life. In these forests lived crocodiles, not the monstrous river killers of the tropics, but smaller relatives, adapted to the gentle warmth of the polar wetlands. Their fossils, preserved in fine-grained sediments, still bear the marks of scales and bone plates that once gleamed beneath the Arctic sun. Nearby, the shells of freshwater turtles tell of ponds and slow-moving streams where they basked on fallen logs and slipped silently into the water when shadows passed overhead. How could such creatures survive in a world of months-long darkness? The answer lies not in the heat alone, but in the stability of the ancient climate. The warmth was global and consistent, with carbon-rich air and soft, even temperatures that never dipped into true winter. Even the long polar nights, which still came every year, were mild and wet, more like an endless dusk than a season of ice. The warmth that reached the poles was proof of how different the planet's heartbeat once was: slower, fuller, and more even. Fossilized wood and pollen from these ancient forests reveal that trees grew thick and tall, their roots pushing deep into rich, damp soil. Ferns unfurled across the ground, and insects thrived in the perpetual twilight. Birds nested among the branches, their feathers dark to capture the light. Mammals scurried through the undergrowth, small and secretive, their warm bodies carrying the first sparks of the future mammalian age. And through this quiet green world, reptiles still held their place, not as relics, but as rulers. When scientists first discovered these fossils, they were met with disbelief. The Arctic was not supposed to host crocodiles. The poles were imagined as eternal, frozen extremes. Yet here was proof that the Earth has always been capable of great transformations, that the cold is not a permanent truth, but a temporary chapter. The bones of those crocodiles, found just a few hundred miles from the ancient pole, tell us that warmth once wrapped the planet from equator to pole like a vast, gentle blanket. The idea stretches the imagination. To picture crocodiles gliding beneath the northern lights, or turtles sleeping through a sunless winter in ponds that never froze, is to realize how dynamic the planet truly is. The world we know, with its icy poles and temperate zones, is only one version of what Earth can be. Beneath its crust and within its air, forces move in rhythms far slower than human memory. Continents drift, currents shift, and the breath of the planet warms and cools over spans too long for us to feel, yet powerful enough to reshape the face of the world. Those ancient crocodiles and turtles were not outliers, they were signs of balance. The Earth, in its warmth, became a single continuous biosphere where even the poles could sustain life that now belongs to the tropics. And though their age ended, the evidence they left behind remains a quiet reminder of how connected all life is to temperature, sunlight, and air. When we look at the Arctic today, with its frozen tundra and fragile ice sheets, it feels like the opposite of that ancient paradise. But beneath the permafrost, the memory of that warmth still lingers. Every fossil unearthed, there is a whisper from a world that felt no need for cold. It is humbling to think that the same laws that guided life then are still at work now. The same tilt of the earth, the same ocean currents, the same delicate balance of air and light. The poles are not fixed places of ice. They are mirrors of the planet's mood, changing with each slow breath of time. So, when we think of the Arctic and the Antarctic, we should not only see the frost and snow, we should also remember the green forests that once stood there, the reptiles that basked beneath the polar sun, and the gentle warmth that touched even the farthest corners of the world. The fossils in the frozen ground are not just remnants of a lost age. They are reminders of the Earth's vast capacity for change, and of how, deep beneath the cold, the memory of warmth never truly fades. The deserts of the world look empty from afar, seas of sand, barren rock, and heat shimmering like glass. But step closer, and you begin to see movement, a flicker of scales beneath a stone, a ripple across the dune, a quiet, ancient patience hiding beneath the sun. These are the desert architects, the quiet engineers of survival, carrying designs so old that they predate mountains themselves. Reptiles have always belonged to the heat. It is their oldest language, one they speak not with sound but with stillness. In the vast quiet of deserts, where water is precious and shade is rare, they have found perfection in simplicity. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement is measured and precise, nothing wasted, nothing hurried. The same wisdom that helped their ancestors survive fire and extinction now sustains them under the burning skies of the modern world. In the deserts of Africa, the Middle East, and Australia, life takes its slow and careful form. The lizard resting on a rock is not idle, it is waiting, absorbing warmth into its body until it has just enough energy to move. When it runs for a reason, to hunt, to hide, or to claim a patch of sunlight that will keep its blood warm for another day. Each motion is deliberate, guided by millions of years of quiet adaptation. The bearded dragon, with its calm eyes and soft spines, spends its mornings basking, its body turning slightly to follow the path of the sun. Its scales are more than decoration, They are armor designed to hold moisture and deflect heat. In the shimmering deserts of Australia, it survives not through aggression, but through balance. It wastes nothing. Further south, across red dunes and dry riverbeds, the thorny devil walks slowly over the sand. Its skin is covered with tiny grooves that channel dew from its body toward its mouth. It drinks the air itself. Each night, when the desert cools and the fog drifts low, water collects on its spines and travels through invisible channels along its skin, drop by drop. This quiet miracle of physics keeps it alive where almost nothing else can endure. In the heat of Africa, the puff adder lies motionless beneath the dust, its body blending perfectly into the sand. It does not chase. It waits. Hours pass, then days. When a small rodent or bird steps too close, there is a flash, a strike, and stillness returns. The desert is not a place for waste or excess. It rewards those who know how to disappear. Even the great tortoises of arid lands follow this rhythm of restraint. The Namib desert tortoise digs deep into the soil to escape the sun, rising only in the cool hours of dawn. Its shell, patterned like old stone, reflects heat and shields life. Inside, its slow heart beats to the calm rhythm of survival, untouched by haste. It carries a miniature world with it, its own shade, its own shelter, its own silence. Everywhere in the desert, silence is strategy. The less a creature moves, the longer it lives. Energy is life, and those who conserve it endure. This is why reptiles still thrive where so many mammals fail. They do not fight the desert's harshness. They become part of it. Their bodies tell the story of evolution's long patience. Scales, a design first perfected hundreds of millions of years ago, remain the ultimate armor. Each one reflects sunlight, traps moisture, and shields against the wind. Beneath those scales lies a simplicity that has outlasted complexity. Warm-blooded animals must eat constantly, drink often, and flee from cold. Reptiles, on the other hand, can wait out storms, droughts, and famine. They can retreat into the earth and wait for seasons to change, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. It is no wonder that deserts, so harsh to others, belong to them. The same qualities that once made reptiles kings of the ancient tropics now make them masters of scarcity. Where there is almost nothing, they find enough. Where others perish, they persist, silent, unhurried, eternal. The horned lizards of North America, with their crown of spikes, tilt their heads to catch droplets from the morning dew. Geckos hide beneath the bark of dry shrubs, their skin shimmering with pale light. Snakes slip through the dunes like moving shadows, their scales whispering against sand. Each creature leaves no mark on the land, no trail of destruction. They live in harmony with the rhythm of heat and stillness, architects of existence itself. As the sun begins to set, the desert softens. The colors fade from gold to violet. The air cools, and the first sounds return, a rustle of scales, a distant chirp, the gentle sigh of sand. Night belongs to the reptiles. Their eyes, adapted to faint light, open once more. They emerge, not to dominate, but to continue their quiet conversation with the earth. They are reminders of the power of simplicity. In a world that rushes, they wait. In a place that burns, they endure. The desert does not forgive waste, and the reptiles have never needed forgiveness. They have found peace in restraint, beauty in silence, and perfection in survival. Their ancestors once ruled a world of forests and seas. Now their descendants rule the sands. And in their stillness, the planet's oldest wisdom continues, a whisper carried by the wind, saying that life endures not by force, but by balance. In the rhythm of life, there are those who move quickly and burn brightly, and those who wait in quiet balance. Mammals and birds carry warmth within them, keeping their bodies alive with constant motion and heat. But reptiles live differently. Their hearts beat slower, their breaths come softer, and their warmth comes not from within but from the world itself. They are cold blooded, yet their stillness holds an advantage that has carried them through every disaster the planet has ever known. To be cold blooded is to live by the rhythm of the earth, not against it. Reptiles take their heat from sunlight and their energy from patience. When the world is generous, they thrive. When it turns harsh, they endure. They do not need to chase every meal or stay awake through every season. Instead, they learn the art of waiting, a gift that has allowed them to outlast empires of life that came and went before them. At the heart of this survival lies metabolism, the invisible fire that fuels every living thing. In warm-blooded animals, this fire never stops burning. Their bodies demand constant fuel to keep their temperatures steady. Every heartbeat, every breath, every twitch of muscle requires energy. They must eat often, hunt constantly, and keep moving even when food is scarce. But reptiles live with a smaller flame. Their bodies rise and fall with the temperature of their surroundings. When the sun warms them, their energy returns. When the world cools, they rest. Their metabolism slows to a whisper. Some can go days, weeks, even months without eating. Others can survive seasons of drought by retreating into burrows or still waters, letting time pass around them. It is a quiet kind of brilliance, not the speed of adaptation, but the mastery of restraint. While warm-blooded creatures must fight to keep their heat alive, reptiles can wait out the battle entirely. They move when the world allows it, and pause when it does not. This efficiency becomes their greatest strength in times of crisis. Throughout Earth's long history, there have been moments when the balance of life collapsed. Volcanic winters, falling asteroids, shifting seas. Each event reshaped the planet and ended the reign of countless species. Yet through every catastrophe, reptiles endured. They did not need to flee from hunger or run from the cold. They slowed, hid, and waited for the warmth to return. When the asteroid struck 66 million years ago, the sky darkened for years. Plants withered, herbivores starved, and the great predators of the Mesozoic vanished with them. The world grew cold and empty, but in the rivers, under the mud, and beneath fallen trees, creatures that could wait, crocodiles, turtles, and lizards, survived. Their hearts beat slowly enough to stretch each breath, each scrap of food, into survival. And when the sunlight returned, they were still there, ready to rebuild. Even today, this quiet endurance remains. In deserts where the air scorches by day and freezes by night, reptiles thrive where few mammals can. They warm themselves in the morning light, hunt when their energy peaks, and rest through the hours when the world burns too fiercely. When drought comes, many retreat into the earth, slowing their heartbeat until rain returns. To live cold-blooded is to live with discipline, to understand the balance between energy and life. It is not weakness but wisdom, the kind that comes from deep time, shaped by countless ages of survival. Evolution has taught reptiles not to resist the world's changes but to flow with them. They do not spend what they cannot afford. Even the structure of their bodies reflects this economy. Their scales seal in moisture. Their hearts can adjust the flow of blood to conserve warmth, and their muscles are tuned for short bursts of power rather than constant exertion. Every system is designed for efficiency. Nothing is wasted. It is a lesson that speaks beyond biology. The world often rewards those who can move fastest, burn brightest, consume most, yet life has always favored balance. The reptiles remind us that survival belongs not only to the strong or the swift, but to those who can endure, those who can pause when the earth does. In their silence lies a kind of harmony. When the sun is too hot, they wait in the shade. When the air cools, they find warmth in stone. They do not struggle to change the world. They move with it, adjusting, conserving, living within its limits. And when the world resets, as it always does, they are there again, the first to return. Their blood may be cold, but it carries the warmth of resilience. Beneath their scales and stillness, the same slow fire continues, steady, ancient, and eternal. It is the fire that has seen the planet through its darkest nights and longest winters. The fire that never needed to burn bright to last forever. Deep within the rocks of the earth, time is patient. It waits in layers, in quiet spirals of stone, in the delicate traces of what once breathed, moved, and dreamed beneath the ancient sun. The fossils that rest there are not silent, not truly. If you know how to listen to the curves of a bone, the pattern of a feather pressed into stone, the imprint of a claw, or the hollow of a skull, you can still hear them whisper. The story they tell is not finished. It continues, reshaping itself with every new discovery, blurring the lines we once thought were clear. The divide between the dinosaurs that vanished and the reptiles that remained is not a wall, but a bridge, a long, winding bridge that still connects the present to the age of giants. When paleontologists first began uncovering the bones of dinosaurs, they imagined them as monsters, vast, cold-blooded, and utterly unlike anything alive today. Their skeletons were displayed as relics of a world that had burned away, their power trapped in stone. But the fossils kept speaking, and with every new find, the story grew stranger and more familiar at the same time. It began with small details, quiet clues hidden in the bones. The hollows of a vertebra hinted at air sacs, the same kind that help modern birds breathe lightly and efficiently. The structure of hips and legs suggested movement that was not slow or lumbering, but graceful, balanced, and alive. The claws that once seemed weapons of brute force began to look more like tools of precision. Then came the feathers. In the fine dust of China's Liaoning province, in ancient lake beds turned to slate, scientists found fossils so well preserved that even the impressions of individual feathers were visible. They belonged not to birds, but to creatures with teeth, long tails, and clawed hands, dinosaurs dressed in plumage. Some were built for flight, others for display, their feathers painted in colors the rocks still remember. Those discoveries did not just change how we saw dinosaurs, they changed how we saw life itself. The boundary between bird and reptile faded, and what emerged was something more profound, a continuum. Evolution's long thread, unbroken, weaving from the scales of the past to the feathers of the present. In their bones, the rhythm of that story continues. A bird's wishbone is the same structure once found in its theropod ancestors, fused for strength. The talons of a hawk curve like the claws of a raptor. Even the movements are echoes, the way a heron lowers its head before striking, the way an ostrich runs with its long, balanced stride, the way a lizard basks with its ribs expanding to catch the warmth. DNA, too, hums the same quiet tune. Though time has eroded most of it, traces linger. In living birds, scientists have found the genetic remnants of traits long vanished: teeth that never grow, tails that never stretch, scales transformed into feathers by the smallest shifts in code. Each discovery feels like a voice from deep time, reminding us that extinction does not always mean disappearance. Sometimes it means transformation. Even behavior carries the whispers forward. Crocodiles build nests and guard their young with fierce devotion, just as some dinosaurs once did. Monitor lizards communicate through gestures and body language, their intelligence closer to that of birds than we once believed. And the birds themselves, with their songs, their migrations, their dances and displays, carry in their movements the echoes of the ancient world. It is as if the earth wrote a melody so perfect it could never be forgotten. The notes change, but the song remains. The fossils hum the first verses, and the living creatures sing the rest. Together, they form a harmony that stretches across millions of years. To hold a fossil is to touch something that once belonged to that music, a single instrument in a vast orchestra of life. You can almost feel the warmth that once filled the bone, the pulse that once moved through it. These bones are not merely evidence of what was, but bridges to what still is. When we look at the skeleton of a bird in flight, we are not seeing something new. We are seeing a form perfected through endless experimentation, shaped by gravity, air, and time. When we watch a lizard basking in sunlight, we are seeing the same quiet patience that kept life alive through catastrophe. Every scale, every feather, every bone tells the same story in a different voice. The fossils do not whisper of endings. They speak of continuity, of adaptation, of life's refusal to vanish completely. In their silence, they remind us that evolution is not a series of replacements, but a song that keeps changing its key. And as we listen, through microscopes, through excavations, through the patient study of bones and genomes, we begin to understand that we are not looking into the past at all. We are standing within it, surrounded by its living echoes. The bones beneath our feet, the birds above our heads, and the reptiles basking in the sun, all part of one unbroken story, still being written, still softly sung by the earth itself. Every age of life has lived under rules, invisible boundaries drawn by physics, chemistry, and the slow rhythm of the planet itself. Evolution may seem limitless in imagination, but every creature, no matter how magnificent, must obey the laws written into the fabric of the earth. The dinosaurs were no exception. Their rise, their reign, and their disappearance all followed the same quiet mathematics that governs every breath still drawn today. To understand why the true dinosaurs will never return, we must first look at the limits that shape all life. The first of these is the air itself. The atmosphere, which seems so endless above us, is not the same as it once was. Millions of years ago, the balance of gases was different. During much of the Mesozoic era, oxygen levels were higher than they are now, feeding bodies that grew to astonishing size. With more oxygen in the air, the lungs of reptiles could work more efficiently, their muscles could draw deeper power, and their cells could burn energy faster. But that gift of abundance has long since faded. Today, the air holds roughly 1/5 oxygen, enough to sustain large mammals and birds, but not enough to fuel the enormous metabolisms of the ancient giants. A sauropod's massive body or a pterosaur's enormous wings would struggle to find the oxygen needed to lift, move, or even live in the modern world. The air that once lifted them now feels thinner, quieter, less kind to the colossal. The second law is written in gravity. Earth's pull has never changed, but the way life interacts with it has. Size has a cost. The larger a creature becomes, the more its weight multiplies, while its strength increases only slightly. A creature twice as large does not have twice the power to carry itself. The bones of dinosaurs were hollowed and ingeniously structured to handle this burden, yet even their designs had limits. On today's Earth, where temperatures, oxygen, and ecosystems are balanced differently, those same forms would struggle under their own weight. The ground could still hold them, but the energy to live that large no longer exists. The third rule is written in warmth. Dinosaurs lived in a world that was, for much of its history, a greenhouse. The air was humid, The poles were lush with vegetation, and the planet's average temperature was far higher than today's. Warmth was the constant breath of that ancient Earth. It allowed reptiles to grow and thrive without the need to generate much internal heat. Now the world is cooler, more variable, and less forgiving. Reptiles survive today by shrinking into niches, the heat of deserts, the stillness of rivers, the calm shallows of tropical coasts. Their designs still echo the past, but the scale has changed. Gigantism belongs to a world that no longer exists. The energy that once poured through the food chains of the Mesozoic has thinned, dispersed among climates and ecosystems that have moved on. Yet, even within those limits, the pattern remains. The Earth may never build another Tyrannosaurus, but it still follows the same architectural rules. Where there is warmth, bodies lengthen. Where oxygen rises, wings grow wider, hearts beat faster, and predators stretch toward power again. Each time the planet tips toward heat, evolution experiments with giants once more. The ancient blueprint stirs, not as a memory, but as an equation written into the code of life. This is the science of limits, the quiet negotiation between what is possible and what is forbidden. Evolution never stops trying, but physics always decides where the line is drawn. The strength of bones, the pull of gravity, the chemistry of air and blood, these are the constants that hold creation in balance. Some have wondered whether humanity could one day overcome these rules, rebuilding the dinosaurs through genetics or engineering. The dream of revival often drifts through science fiction, the idea that with enough DNA and technology, we might walk among them again. But even if their genes were pieced back together, the world around them would betray the illusion. The air would suffocate them, the climate would confuse them. The plants that fed them are gone, replaced by new species with new chemistries. The soil itself no longer speaks their language. In truth, it is not only the animals that vanished, it is their world. The stage that once held them has been rebuilt countless times since. Oceans opened and closed, mountains rose and wore away, continents drifted, and climates cooled. The Mesozoic was not just an age of creatures, but an age of physics and chemistry in perfect alignment with their design. That alignment has passed. And yet, this is not a story of loss, but of continuity. The same laws that once shaped the dinosaurs now shape us. The same boundaries that defined their world still define every living thing. Gravity, temperature, air, and energy. These are not walls to mourn, but foundations to respect. Within them, life keeps finding new ways to reach upward, to grow, to adapt. So while true dinosaurs can never return, their spirit never truly left. It lingers in every soaring bird, every reptile basking under the sun, every heartbeat that rises and falls with the rhythm of the planet. The limits remain, but within those limits, life still dances, changing its form, never repeating exactly, but always following the same timeless song written into the laws of the earth. The air of the modern world is changing again, slowly, invisibly, but with the same quiet force that has rewritten the Earth's story countless times before. The atmosphere thickens with warmth, the ice retreats, and the balance begins to shift. It feels new, yet in truth, this is not the first time the planet has breathed this kind of heat. The rocks remember it. The oceans remember it. Even life itself remembers it. Every rise in temperature tells an old story, one that stretches far beyond humanity. For hundreds of millions of years, the Earth has cycled between warmth and cold, long exhalations of heat followed by deep, patient breaths of ice. These swings have shaped everything that ever lived. When the world warms, forests spread, oceans swell, and reptiles rise. When it cools, mammals step forward. It is a rhythm older than the continents, a heartbeat that has never stopped. Today, we are feeling that pulse again, only faster. The warmth that once took thousands of years to build now unfolds within centuries, yet the pattern is familiar, eerily so. It mirrors the greenhouse ages when the planet belonged to creatures scaled and ancient, when jungles touched the poles and reptiles filled every corner of the world. The past and present, once separated by millions of years, begin to look strangely alike. Already, signs of that return are appearing. In the southern wetlands, crocodiles glide farther north, their territories stretching into waters once too cool for them. In deserts and forests, snakes grow larger, their breeding seasons lengthened by the gentle rise in heat. Lizards, once confined to tropical zones, now bask beneath suns that shine on lands that used to be temperate. The earth, as it warms, is slowly inviting its oldest designs back into power. To live in warmth is to awaken the old rules. Reptiles are creatures of sunlight, built to thrive when the world is generous with heat. Their bodies draw energy from the air, their movements sharpen, their hearts beat faster as the temperature climbs. In a cooling world, they fade into dormancy. In a warming one, they quicken again. The pattern is so consistent that paleontologists can trace entire epochs by the rise and fall of reptilian fossils. Warmth has always been their call. When we look at the fossil record, the parallels are striking. During the late Paleocene, when the planet's average temperature rose sharply, snakes and crocodiles expanded across continents, growing in both size and number. Forests covered regions that are frozen today, and giant reptiles once swam in what are now polar seas. In that same warmth, mammals remained smaller, more cautious, clinging to the shadows of a world that belonged to scales. The same balance is stirring again, though in subtler ways. Our oceans, heavy with heat, cradle species long thought limited to the tropics. Sea turtles push farther toward the poles, guided by waters that no longer chill them. Insects grow larger in humid air, while amphibians reclaim wetlands, where frost once kept them away. Evolution responds to temperature not with haste, but with certainty. The blueprint of life adapts, reshapes, and finds old paths waiting beneath the new light. And within this shift lies a haunting symmetry. For all our progress, our machines, and our cities, we are still bound to the same physics that ruled the dinosaurs, the same equations of heat, air, and life, the same relationship between sunlight and blood, between energy and form. The earth does not remember creatures the way we do, it remembers patterns. And as the warmth deepens, it may be those patterns, not our technologies, that determine what thrives next. It is not prophecy, only physics. The same sunlight that feeds our fields also stirs the jungles. The same atmosphere that sustains our breath fuels the fires of change. Warmth is both giver and taker, a quiet sculptor that builds worlds as easily as it erases them. In the tropics, monitor lizards grow larger, their territories expanding with every decade of rising heat. In the wetlands, crocodiles bask longer, their eggs hatching earlier. Even the smallest creatures, geckos, skinks, turtles, respond in rhythm, adjusting their lives to the new length of summer. It is as though the planet itself is tuning back to an older melody, one written before mammals ever dreamed of dominance. And perhaps that is what we are witnessing, not the end of an age, but the turning of a page. The world does not move backward, yet it rhymes with its own history. Each rise in temperature reawakens the forms that once ruled under the same conditions. The age of mammals may not vanish, but it may have to share the stage again with the patient heirs of heat. The thought is not a warning, nor a comfort, only an observation. The earth is older than fear. It has rebuilt itself after every fire, every flood, every extinction, and each time it warms, it reaches for the same ancient shapes, the ones that waste nothing, move with silence, and thrive in sunlight. Perhaps, then, the dragons never truly left. They only waited beneath the rhythm of the world, in the rivers, in the forests, in the stillness between seasons. And as the warmth deepens, they stir once more, not as monsters, but as memories made flesh, rising again under a sun that feels just a little too familiar. Perhaps the next age of dragons has already begun. Life has always been music, not the kind that can be heard with ears, but the kind that hums beneath everything, in the pulse of the oceans, in the turning of the earth, in the long quiet between one heartbeat of creation and the next. Evolution is not a straight line, not a climb from simplicity to perfection, but a melody that drifts and returns, weaving old notes into new songs. It is a symphony without a composer, yet somehow it plays with balance, grace, and memory. When we look back across deep time, we can almost hear it, the low, rumbling movements of the earliest oceans where life first began its fragile tune. The sudden crescendos of expansion, when creatures filled every niche and color of the sea. Then the sharp silences, the pauses that came when the music faltered, when extinction wiped the slate clean, leaving only echoes behind. But each time, the melody began again, never the same, yet never completely new. This rhythm of extinction and renewal is the heartbeat of the planet. Across hundreds of millions of years, it has pulsed in steady measure. 5 great mass extinctions mark the most dramatic of these pauses, the deep breaths between movements in the symphony of life. The first emptied the seas, the second erased reefs that had stood for ages, the third nearly silenced the earth itself, leaving only whispers of what had been. The fourth brought new light, and the fifth took the dinosaurs, the masters of an ancient verse. Yet through every silence, something endured. Life waited, adapted, reshaped itself, and began to play again. A little softer, perhaps, but always persistent. It never starts from nothing. In the ashes of one song, there is always a note that lingers, carrying forward into the next refrain. That note may be a cell, a seed, a small mammal huddled in the dark, or a bird tracing the sky with wings that remember the dinosaurs. The beauty of this cycle is not in its tragedy, but in its constancy. The earth forgets nothing. It keeps the score written in stone and in DNA, the same way a river remembers the path it once carved. Even when whole species vanish, the patterns they created, the shapes, the instincts, the ways of being, ripple onward. Life borrows from itself. Every new creature carries fragments of something ancient, like instruments built from the wood of older trees. In this way, evolution feels less like invention and more like orchestration. Each age is a new arrangement of familiar notes, composed by chance, shaped by circumstance, but guided by the physics of the world. Gravity, heat, and chemistry form the sheet music, setting the tempo. The creatures simply play within it, improvising endlessly. Some verses are wild and thundering, filled with predators and giants. Others are soft and simple, coral gardens, moss-covered forests, quiet trilobites gliding through ancient seas. The tone changes with the climate, the instruments with the species, but the rhythm never stops. The rise and fall of life is not a story of victory and loss. It is a long, slow song of transformation, moving always toward balance. And perhaps that is the most comforting truth of all, that even in destruction, there is order. Extinction may seem like silence, but it is only rest. A pause between movements, a moment for the world to catch its breath before the next verse begins. In the great scope of geological time, recovery is inevitable. Life, no matter how fragile it seems, has never failed to return. Even now, as we watch the planet change, as species vanish and climates shift, that ancient rhythm continues beneath our feet. Evolution does not mourn. It listens, adjusts, and begins again. The forms may change, feathers where once there were scales, fur where once there was armor, but the essence remains. Energy flowing through matter, endlessly reorganizing itself into new possibilities. If you could step back far enough, beyond the limits of a single lifetime, beyond even the span of humanity, you would see it clearly. A vast, living composition, rich with harmony. You would see how extinction gives space for creation, how chaos breeds order, how even death feeds new beginnings. The melody of life is not fragile, it is patient. And so the earth plays on. The same song that began in the first tide pools still drifts through the forests, the deserts, the open sky. We are part of its latest verse, listening without realizing, carried along by the same current that moved through the bones of reptiles and the feathers of ancient birds. The unfinished symphony of evolution has no final movement. It will never end because it was never meant to. The music will shift, soften, and rise again long after we are gone. Each age, each species, each breath adds its own faint tone to the chorus. And together, across the endless sweep of time, they form the sound of something eternal, the quiet, steady song of life finding its way once more. If every fossil is a memory carved in stone, then DNA is the memory written in light, a language that never fades, carried forward in every living thing. Hidden within that twisting molecule is the most faithful storyteller the earth has ever known. It does not speak in words or sounds, but in codes, in patterns of chemical rhythm that record not only what life is, but what it once was. Every cell in every creature carries a trace of the past, a quiet whisper of what came before. Inside us all lies a library that began when the planet was young, the first single-celled beings that drifted in the ocean billions of years ago wrote the opening lines, using the 4 letters of their alphabet, A, T, C, and G, to record the instructions for being alive. Every generation since has copied that code, adding its own variations, sometimes mistakes, sometimes miracles, always building upon what was already there. Over time, those letters have become the memory of the earth itself. In a bird's feather, in a lizard's scale, in the beating heart of a mammal, the same ancient code repeats, reshaped by evolution but never erased. DNA does not forget. Even as species vanish, parts of their blueprint live on, carried forward in the genes of survivors, like echoes rippling through time. In that way, the story of the dinosaurs never truly ended, it simply changed form. The bones of ancient reptiles may have turned to stone, but their instructions for life, for bone, for tooth, for muscle, for scale, still exist within the descendants of their world. The pattern did not die with them. It folded itself into the code of birds, of reptiles, of the warm-blooded creatures that once hid from their shadows. Scientists have traced those echoes, line by line, through genomes. They have found that birds still carry genetic remnants of their reptilian ancestors, the same clusters of genes that once built the snouts and tails of dinosaurs now shape beaks and feathers. In the embryonic stages of development, the shadow of deep time flickers, a bird embryo briefly forming a reptilian tail before it fades away, a reminder of what evolution once sculpted and later refined. Even mammals, distant from that ancient reptile lineage, hold memories older than their own kind. Our DNA contains sequences that date back hundreds of millions of years, remnants of the first creatures with backbones, the first to walk on land, the first to draw breath in open air. Within every one of us lies a record of oceans long vanished, forests long turned to coal, and creatures whose names the world has forgotten. It is humbling to realize that the very same code that built a trilobite's shell also built a human hand, that the genetic toolkit which shaped a tyrannosaur's jaw can still be found in altered form, helping to build the skulls of modern animals. Life never starts over completely. It recycles, reuses, and revises. Evolution as an editor, not an author, rewriting the same pages with new meaning each time. Some scientists call this the deep homology of life, the shared architecture that unites every organism, from the smallest bacterium to the largest whale. It means that no creature stands entirely alone. Every form of life, no matter how strange or distant, is connected by invisible threads of inheritance, bound by the same language that has been spoken since the dawn of biology. In that sense, the genome is not just a record of survival. It is a form of memory older than thought, older than bones. When a bird spreads its wings, when a snake curls beneath the heat of the sun, when a lizard watches silently from a rock, they are not merely acting as themselves. They are performing gestures practiced for eons, drawn from instructions that have endured through countless worlds. Even the errors in DNA, the mutations, the misprints, carry meaning. They are the improvisations of nature's long composition. Some create new possibilities, others fade into silence, but all are part of the same great continuity. The genome is not perfect, but it is persistent. It endures because life endures. When scientists sequence the genomes of modern species, they are not only reading the story of today, they are reading the echoes of every life that came before. The genes that flicker in a reptile's blood also flickered in the veins of creatures long buried in stone. The proteins that form a bird's feathers once shaped scales in a warmer, older world. The instructions for survival, written in the same chemical ink, have been copied and passed down through every age. It is tempting to think of evolution as a process that forgets, old species disappearing to make way for new. But in truth, nothing is ever truly forgotten. The DNA of every living being is an archive of persistence. It holds the signatures of ancestors so distant that even the rocks barely remember their time. And so, the blueprint of life remains unbroken, not preserved in museums or bones, but alive, breathing, encoded in every cell that grows and divides. It has traveled through cataclysms and silence, through fire and ice, through the fall of empires and the rise of continents. It has never stopped copying itself, never stopped remembering. In the quiet pulse of every genome, the earth remembers what it once dreamed, the shape of wings, the curve of claws, the spark of awareness in eyes that once watched the stars from beneath a different sky. The blueprint never vanished. It lives still, whispering its ancient story in every heartbeat, every breath, every flicker of life that carries the memory of the world forward. If you listen closely enough, beneath the hum of the present moment, beneath the wind that brushes through leaves and the faint rhythm of your own heartbeat, there is another sound. It is older than language, older than mountains, older even than the seas. It is the slow pulse of life remembering itself. Every creature that ever lived has added a note to that rhythm, each one a syllable in a story that the earth has been whispering for billions of years. A story written not in ink or stone, but in the curve of bones, in the flutter of wings, in the gentle persistence of breath. When we look back across the ages, it might seem as though the world has forgotten much. Entire continents have shifted and reshaped. Oceans have swallowed lands and given birth to others, and the sky itself has changed its tone and color more times than we could count. Yet beneath all that movement, the story has stayed the same. The earth does not forget, it rewrites, it remembers through repetition, through the way rivers still carve their paths to the sea, through the way seeds still turn toward the light, through the way a heartbeat, whether in a bird, a human, or a reptile, still follows the same soft rhythm that began long before time had a name. The memory of life is long, far longer than the rise and fall of species or the fleeting passage of civilizations. It is stored in the smallest and most enduring forms, in DNA spirals that outlast flesh, in fossils pressed between layers of stone, in the quiet persistence of instincts that carry forward through every age. A bird lifting into the air today still carries within its blood the same coded instructions that once guided the wings of creatures who soared above primeval jungles. A lizard resting in the sun carries the same patience that let its ancestors survive fire, flood, and famine. And we, too, carry that memory, written deep within the architecture of our cells. If you were to trace the threads of your own existence backward, through generations and time, you would find yourself woven into every chapter of Earth's story. The ancestors of your ancestors walked alongside the first mammals that peered into the dark after the age of reptiles. Go further back, and you would share your breath with creatures that crawled from the sea, whose blood first learned to carry oxygen through delicate veins. Beyond that, your story meets the first single-celled beings drifting in ancient waters, tiny sparks of curiosity in a world that had only just learned to live. We are not apart from this story. We are its newest sentence. And as we breathe, the earth breathes with us, an endless exchange of air, warmth, and memory. The same oxygen we draw into our lungs once filled the air of the Cretaceous skies. The same carbon in our bones once lay in the trunks of giant ferns. Even the water we drink has passed through countless lives before ours, cycling through time like a heartbeat that never stops. Life is continuity, disguised as change. The forms alter, the names shift, but the essence remains. It is there in the resilience of a seedling cracking through concrete, in the spiral of a shell washed upon a shore, in the shimmer of scales beneath the surface of a quiet river. Nature speaks through patterns that repeat, but never perfectly. Each new age is a variation on an ancient theme, a familiar melody played on new instruments. The dinosaurs may be gone, but their shape, their strength, and their spirit persist in the creatures that walk, swim, and fly today. The blueprint that once ruled the earth never truly vanished. It simply changed costume, slipped into new forms, and continued the dance. In the end, that is the secret of the world, not destruction, but transformation. The story of life is not one of endings, but of endless adaptation, a song that finds new verses whenever the old ones fade. And as you sit here now, breathing in the air that has traveled through the lungs of countless lives before yours, you are part of that song too. Every exhale you give back to the world joins the great circulation of memory into trees, into oceans, into the silent breath of the night. If you close your eyes, you can almost feel it. The slow rhythm of the planet beneath you, the warmth of life flowing endlessly, reshaping itself with each generation. The comfort of knowing that nothing is truly lost, only rewritten. Earth forgets nothing. It rewrites the same story, again and again, in scale and bone, in feather and leaf, in silence and song. And through it all, the music continues, steady, eternal, and soft. So now, as the story quiets and the night deepens, take a slow breath. Let it fill you with the calm of knowing that you are part of something far older and wiser than yourself. The world beneath you has carried life through fire, ice, and darkness, and it still carries it now, gently, patiently, like a cradle that never stops rocking. And somewhere, beneath the turning stars, the earth continues to hum its ancient tune, the long memory of life, still unfolding, still remembering, still dreaming,